More locations. History for tomorrow. Yesterday's narrative, today's guide. Join us as we discuss.
Stop putting off those plumbing projects. Start right. Start here at H&L Rapid True Value for plumbing supplies. The time by H&L Rapid True Value is
nationwide time 5 o'clock.
News at 5 teasers are brought to you by Advanced Scales and Equipment. Service is our total commitment.
From the Nationwide News Network, comprehensive, incisive, tough. This is Nationwide at 5.
Good afternoon, I'm Nora Gay Banton.
And I'm Roby Ann Williams.
In Nationwide News at this hour, Lord Reid says the Privy Council is still eager to serve Jamaica.
I'm very grateful for the opportunities we have to serve the citizens of Jamaica and the other Privy Council jurisdictions. It is an enormous privilege.
And Lord Reid has recommended to the UK government that senior judges from the jurisdiction that they sit on the Privy Council.
Government and opposition MPs sparred over the implementation of tougher mandatory minimum penalties for murder.
Let us not go again and pass bad legislation which will have a negative impact. This does not address the root cause of the problem.
Until you can find the families and deal with the emotional trauma there, you're not going to have any change.
Agriculture Ministry to step up its mitigation efforts in response to ongoing drought affecting farmers.
The judge rules that ex-soldier involved in Portmore shootout is not legally responsible for his actions.
In news from the rest of the world, Dr. Jean Leon is threatening to sue the Caribbean Development Bank.
TikTok pledges to fight unconstitutional U.S. ban.
In headline sports, all's in place ahead of tomorrow's big election to decide who leads Jamaica's cricket for the next 2 years.
And later in our broadcast, in our cover story at 5:35, it has been revealed that at least 3 children have been summarily dismissed from St. James High School. What are the proper procedures for dismissals in public schools? President of the Jamaica Association of Chairmen of Secondary Schools, Courtney Winter, and President of the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools, Linvern Wright, will join us.
In public opinion at 6:26, we ask, what's your reaction to the continued reduction in the country's homicide rate? Give us your comments by logging on to our Facebook page, Nationwide News Network, and by tweeting us at Nationwide Radio, and message us on WhatsApp at 876-285-5693. You can also leave your comments on Instagram at Nationwide 90FM.
In the nation's business at 6:40, President of the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council, Lord Reid, says he has recommended to the UK government that senior judges from the jurisdictions that they serve sit on the Privy Council in an effort to understand the conditions of those countries. He was addressing a reasoning session at the Faculty of Law at the UWI Mona on Wednesday. You'll hear his address.
At 7:30, it's Think Like a Stockbroker with Siobhan Campbell.
And at 8, it's Boyatings After Dark with Kareem Boyatings Weathers. All these and more as we take you home on air on your mobile, Nationwide 90FM, nationwideradiojm.com, and on the Nationwide app available on Google Play and the Apple App Store this Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday, April 24, 2024.
News at 5 teasers were brought to you by Advanced Scales and Equipment. Service is our total commitment.
If it's news, it's got to be Nationwide 90 FM.
Now to the details. President of the Judicial Committee of the UK-based Privy Council, Lord Reid, says he has asked the British government to invite senior judges from the jurisdictions that they serve to sit with them in an effort to understand the conditions of those countries from which appeal cases come. Lord Reid made the statement on Wednesday while delivering a virtual lecture at an event put on by the Mona campus of the University of the West Indies. Norgay Banton reports.
The lecture was held under the theme, Judicial Policy Construction by Apex Courts. The lecture comes as the debate continues about whether Jamaica should continue to cling to the Privy Council as its final appellate court or accede to the civil and criminal jurisdictions of the Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ. Some legal experts have asserted that Jamaica's Apex Court should continue to be the Privy Council because they are far removed from the local conditions of a jurisdiction and assess a case with no preconceived biases. However, this has also been a criticism of the Privy Council and a reason given for those advocating for the CCJ to be Jamaica's final appellate court. Lord Reid says he has recommended to the UK government that senior judges from the jurisdictions that they serve sit on the Privy Council.
Having the benefit of the opinion of a judge with direct experience of local conditions can only enhance the quality of the Privy Council's decision-making. I've therefore asked the UK government to consider a proposal to invite senior judges from outside the UK to sit with us again on the Privy Council. This isn't currently possible in relation to most of the Privy Council jurisdictions under the legislation which currently governs appointments. The exceptions include judges of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, the High Court of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Supreme Court of Jamaica, who can sit on the Privy Council if they are first appointed as Privy Councillors. At present, none of the judges from these jurisdictions are Privy Councillors, but I am hopeful that that position may change before long.
He says Privy Council judges have also, over the years, taken the opportunity to sit in other jurisdictions that they serve in an effort to experience the hearings of cases in those locales. Lord Reid also addressed the criticism that the Privy Council is inaccessible and expensive for litigants in Jamaica and other jurisdictions.
Of course, I'm conscious of a significant expense involved in travelling to the UK from some of the Privy Council jurisdictions. The Privy Council therefore offers online or hybrid hearings, which can sometimes be the most efficient and proportionate option. This also enables us to hear the case at a time when it can be viewed by the public locally. For example, we had a case from the Cook Islands in the Pacific concerned with the protection of the marine environment. We heard the case online and sat at 7 o'clock in the evening in the UK, which was 9 o'clock in the morning in the Cook Islands.
Lord Reid says the internet has increased the accessibility of the court.
Privy Council hearings are all live streamed on the court's website and made available on demand afterwards on both the website and the court's YouTube channel. For example, over 55,000 people watched the Sean Campbell hearing live online. This enabled those with an interest in the case in Jamaica and elsewhere, and there was a particularly high number of viewers in New York, to see the arguments being put forward by counsel, the questions being asked by the judges, to get a much better understanding of the proceedings than would have been possible in the pre-internet age.
Norige Banton for Nationwide News.
Meanwhile, Lord Reid says the Privy Council is still eager to serve Jamaica.
Is felt throughout all the jurisdictions we serve. As judges, it is our vocation to give people a reason to believe that justice is possible. We have a duty to do our best to make justice happen every day, to try to make the world more just for all our citizens. I'm very grateful for the opportunities we have to serve the citizens of Jamaica and the other Privy Council jurisdictions. It is a responsibility that I and my colleagues take very seriously and an enormous privilege.
That's Lord Reid, President of the Judicial Committee of the UK-based Privy Council.
Government and opposition parliamentarians sparred over the implementation of tougher mandatory minimum penalties for murder. The legislation was brought to the House of Representatives on Tuesday. However, the opposition continues to question the utility of legislating tougher penalties even as the underlying issues driving violent crime remain unaddressed. Siobhan Campbell tells us more.
South East St. Andrew Member of Parliament Julian Robinson outlined to the House several reasons to support his belief that the imposition of tougher penalties would do more harm than good.
First, there's no evidence that has been provided that judges have been applying what I call the light touch in sentences to persons who have been convicted of serious crimes. Second, there is no evidence that harsher sentences are a deterrent to criminal activity. But Madam Speaker, this legislation is bad on a number of grounds. Apart from that, it does not address the critical reason why we have violent crimes. I believe what we are trying to do is to give the impression that we are tough on crime without dealing with the causes of crime.
Mr. Robinson was strongly opposed to the imposition of tougher penalties for offenders under the age of 18. He says the government should focus on addressing the root causes of criminal behavior rather than enact more bad legislation.
And I'm really focused on those 18 and under. It's different for adults, but there are many issues that give rise to 18 and unders committing crime. This will do nothing to solve the problem. And in the same way, we passed the Ombudsman Act to incorporate it into EOJ, and it's been an absolute failure. Nothing happened in the local government election. Absolute failure. Let us not go again and pass bad legislation, which will have a negative impact and not deal with the root cause of the problem. This does not address the root cause of the problem.
But National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang clapped back. According to him, the types of social interventions promoted by the former PNP administration were an absolute failure.
The tradition of using projects to invest in social intervention was shown by all the researchers to have failed. Not on the huge volume of what 300 million spent, and in some small alleged NGOs, because the government fund them, PMI and a number of others, which are small offices, couldn't serve the community. But the project funding that was used along the way, all indications that over 70% of the funds went to parallel staff, consultants, researchers, and very little reached the source of the community where the people are in need of it. It's a fact of research.
Dr. Chang says the government has adopted a far more comprehensive and impactful strategy centered around case managers using psychosocial interventions. The minister says that strategy, coupled with tougher penalties, will be far more effective than the handout system practiced by the previous PNP government.
The psychosocial aids are crucial to, in fact, dealing with what you refer as the root cause. Until you can find the families and deal with them and deal with the emotional trauma there, you're not going to have any change. Just providing some handouts does not help. That's what was being done. We have trained people. Our case management operation is now being looked at internationally for best practice.
Siobhan Campbell for Nationwide News.
Minister of Agriculture Floyd Green says the ministry will step up its mitigation efforts as farmers across the island continue to struggle amid the ongoing drought. He provided the update at Wednesday's post-cabinet briefing.
We're now focusing on Clarendon, St. Elizabeth, Manchester, Trelawney, Westmoreland, St. Anne and Portland. We've allocated an additional $24 million to the trucking of water, which is part of a bigger program that amounts to about $90 million. We've targeted about 6 areas, highly productive zones, that we're building retention, catchment areas. We have earmarked over $8 million to that drive. We have completed one already in Hindstown. We're doing some work in Lucky Pen in St. Mary to ensure that when the rain does come, that our farmers are better able to capture that water and to use that water for their agricultural enterprise.
Minister Green says additional water trucks will be deployed to assist farmers in St. Anne, St. Elizabeth and St. Catherine.
The Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited, one of our agencies under the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, would have recently unveiled a new 5,000-gallon water truck that will target farmers in St. Anne. So that's an investment of about $15 million. We're targeting about 4,000 farmers. We will be unveiling 2 more water trucks this week to service communities in St. Elizabeth and in St. Catherine. Additionally, of the $90 million that we have earmarked, we will be providing additional support for storage and drip irrigation system. Additionally, we've earmarked about $8 million to really help with our livestock farmers.
Floyd Green, Minister of Agriculture.
Meanwhile, the Agriculture Minister says despite the drought cycles last year, agriculture recorded growth of more than 10% between January and March this year.
Despite having a very challenging year last year, our farmers really put their shoulders to the wheel to start 2024. And our preliminary figures indicate that the first quarter of 2024, we would have grown our agricultural sector by over 10%. And that is a testament to the hard work, dedication, and determination of our farmers.
Floyd Green, Minister of Agriculture. You're listening to Nationwide at 5. More news after these.
Value Drug Pharmacy offers curbside pickup and delivery of your branded and generic drugs. WhatsApp your prescription to 876-881-6695. The time by Value Drug Pharmacy is
5:14.
Rent-to-Kill Initial offers air purification solutions with triple filtration and unique auto-sensing capabilities that neutralizes malodor and replaces it with clean air. Call Rent-to-Kill Initial at 926-4236 for more details.
The temperature by Rent-to-Kill is
32 degrees Celsius in Kingston, 29 out west in Montego Bay.
Continuing the news, the ex-soldier who engaged police in a shootout in Cumberland, Portland in St. Catherine was found not legally responsible for his actions due to his mental condition at the time. Dane Johnson challenged the police on November 2, 2021. Robian Williams tells us more.
The decision was handed down by Justice Anne-Marie Granger after Johnson's trial in the gun court in downtown Kingston on Monday. The police were reportedly called to Johnson's house following reports that he locked himself inside and was firing gunshots. Upon reaching the house, the police came under heavy gunfire, which they returned. Johnson and a policeman were injured during the exchange. Johnson eventually surrendered to the police after his wife intervened. He was subsequently charged with shooting with intent, wounding with intent, illegal possession of firearm, and illegal possession of ammunition. At the trial, the defense presented evidence from 5 psychologists that at the time of the incident, Johnson was suffering from schizophrenia, which causes hallucinations and delusions. The court was told that he had been diagnosed with the condition in 2017. His wife also gave evidence that on the day in question, he was acting strangely, and when she saw him after the incident, he looked spaced out and was not responding to her. One of the policemen involved in the shootout testified that when he called out to Johnson to cease firing, Johnson responded by singing a gospel song that was not known to him. The allegations were not challenged by the defense. Johnson was represented by King's Counsel Peter Champagny and Samoya Campbell. Champagny and Campbell argued that based on Johnson's mental condition at the time, a special verdict should be entered, which would mean he's not legally responsible for the offenses. Justice Granger agreed. Johnson will appear in court on June 7 for sentencing. Robian Williams for Nationwide News.
And that shootout took place in Cumberland, Portmore in St. Catherine. Some residents of Mount Pleasant in northwest Clarendon are upset with their Member of Parliament, the JLP's Philip Henriquez, over the state of the roads in their community. They say if the roads are not repaired, they will find it hard to support Henriquez if he decides to seek a new term in office at the next general election. Dana Davy reports.
Philip Henriquez was one of the JLP's surprise winners at the September 2020 general elections. But some of his constituents say they are frustrated by his lack of representation, especially on the matter of roads. They say they are speaking up now as they are eager to seize the opportunities that will be provided under the government's new Shared Prosperity Through Accelerated Improvement to Our Road Network (SPARK) program. Some residents who chose not to speak on the record say several constituents did not vote in the recent local government election because of the state of the roads. They say MP Henriquez will feel their wrath come general election day. One person claimed that MP Henriquez was absent from the campaign trail and failed to support Councillor Colin Henry, who went on to secure the Thompson Town division for the JLP. One resident who did speak on the record, Don Thompson, says only one taxi currently serves the community.
I vote for him, and it's one time he passed through, I don't mean against me glimpsing. Condition of the road is very bad, especially up by the school. You can hardly pass up there to come down, so through that people sometimes taxi them now come down here, and you have your load and baggage and you carry on your head. And one number taxi run down here, and when it break down, you have to carry them power because we don't have no road for no taxi come down here.
Councillor for the Thompson Town division, which includes Mount Pleasant, Colin Henry, admits that the roads in the community have been neglected for several years.
In years now, Mount Pleasant have not received any benefit as it relates to the main road, and especially the school road there is in a deplorable condition. It's really a bad state that needs some attention like yesterday, if you ask me. Mount Pleasant will definitely have to be a part of this major road rehabilitation. I would see Mount Pleasant as a priority road, given the fact that it's in the poor condition and it's heavily used. So I would see that as a priority for me, but I am not sure what the stakeholders are saying in terms of the Member of Parliament and other body across the constituency.
The school road referred to is the main road in the community that also connects the communities of Mount Pleasant and the Banana Ground to the Garlogi Primary and Infant School. That school has an enrollment of 150 students. School principal Valentine White says the bad condition of the road has created a dire situation for the students.
As principal, I keep hearing from members of the community that they are willing to send their children to Garlogi. However, because of the condition of the road, it makes little or no sense for them to send their child there because no taxi is willing to come around by the school. When it rains, it is treacherous for students because they find themselves skipping water. I believe that those who walk on that road during the night, it is probably a dangerous trick. So the truth of the matter is, I believe our road needs to be addressed as quickly as possible.
Dana Davey for Nationwide News.
And the MP for Northwest Clarendon, the JLP's Philip Henriquez, is denying claims he has neglected the roads in the Mount Pleasant community in his constituency. Mr. Henriquez told our news centre that the roads were deplorable long before he took over as MP in September 2020. We'll have more on this story in the 6 p.m. headlines.
World in a Minute is brought to you by ABC Electrical Sales. We make things as easy as ABC. Hose Assembly and Supply, equipping Jamaica for success. Charles O'Connor Consulting Network, COCN, empowering entrepreneurs for a better future.
The World in a Minute.
Former President of the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, Dr. Jean Leon, is threatening to sue the financial institution if he does not hear from it by May 4 to negotiate an amicable separation. In a legal letter dated April 21, in which he announced his immediate resignation, lawyers for Dr. Leon accused the CDB of conducting an investigation of him that was unconventional. Dr. Leon's lawyers say the CDB's probe concerning their client was beset with grave procedural irregularities that fatally tainted it. In the 3-page letter sent to the CDB, Dr. Leon's lawyers say their client is of the opinion that he will never be treated fairly after he had been sent on administrative leave in January. They say it's also evident that the CDB has lost all trust and confidence in their client by the failure of the Board of Governors to prevent the continued violations of its charter, policies, rules and regulations with regard to its elected president. In January, it was disclosed that Dr. Leon, a St. Lucian, had been sent on administrative leave until April this year as part of ongoing administrative process. The CDB has remained mum on the circumstances surrounding that decision.
Further afield, TikTok says it will go to court to challenge a law that could result in it being sold or banned in the United States. President Joe Biden has signed into law a bill which gives the social media platform's Chinese owner ByteDance 9 months to divest the app or see it blocked in the United States. The law has been introduced amid concerns TikTok might share user data with the Chinese government. TikTok has consistently denied the claim. In a video posted on the platform, TikTok boss Shaoji Chu lambasted the bill and called for people to share their stories of how TikTok had improved their lives. The measure was passed as part of a package of 4 bills, which also included military aid for Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and other U.S. partners in the Indo-Pacific region. It had widespread support from lawmakers, with 79 senators voting in support and 18 against.
World in a Minute was brought to you by ABC Electrical Sales. We make things as easy as ABC. Hose Assembly and Supply, equipping Jamaica for success. Charles O'Connor Consulting Network, COCN, empowering entrepreneurs for a better future.
Recapping the top stories making nationwide news at this hour, Lord Reid says the Privy Council is still eager to serve Jamaica.
I'm very grateful for the opportunities we have to serve the citizens of Jamaica and the other Privy Council jurisdictions. It is an enormous privilege.
And Lord Reid has recommended to UK government that senior judges from the jurisdictions that they serve sit on the Privy Council.
Government and opposition MPs sparred over the implementation of tougher mandatory minimum penalties for murder. I'm Nora Gay Banton.
And I'm Robianne Williams.
You can find the news on our website at nationwideradiojm.com and on Nationwide app available on the Google Play and the Apple App Store. News next, the headlines at 6.
I stay locked to the Olympics because, of course, I'm Jamaican. What you mean? Me, I have to tune into the Olympics, man. Because I'm always busy, but what? I have to know when Sherika Jackson beat Shakari.
Brother, I have to have every notification for the Olympics. I want to hear every run.
Now Sherika Jackson coming
every jump.
Oh, that is absolutely huge of Wade Pinkham.
Every fling, live.
So, take us then.
Nothing can miss me.
We're always on the move.
So while we're driving, run, Elaine, run.
Jogging. Yes. Run, Watson. Win again.
Watson is now a world champion.
Or even at work.
Quick, the race has started.
We can't miss a beat because we keep it locked
to the only station
for the Paris Olympics.
Nationwide.
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 90 FM.
Nationwide 90.1, 90.3, 90.5, 90.7 and 90.9 and on YouTube at Nationwide 90 FM Live. Nationwide, the new revolution in media.
Sports at 5 is brought to you by Total Tools. They almost always have it.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Sports here on Nationwide 90 FM. I'm Wayne Walker. Grey Shield champions Excelsior High School, they were closing in on a decisive victory over Grace Headley Cup winners Manchester High late on the second day of their 3-day Pauline Cup playoff at Melbourne, set 403 to win. Manchester High at sports time were 183 for 8, still 219 runs behind. Padgett Nelson was dismissed a short time ago for 69. Earlier, Excelsior, who resumed their second innings this morning on 82 for 4, went on to make 255 all out for an overall lead of 402. Captain Michael Clark top scored with 57. He got good support from Tariq Forbes at 39, Jameer Daly 36, and David Dewar 32. Captain Brian Barnes bagged 4 for 56 bowling for Manchester, while Barrington Simpson weighed in with 3 for 48 and Matthew Morgan 2 for 68. The leadership of Jamaica's Cricket Association will be on the line tomorrow when 99 delegates go to the polls to decide whether the incumbent president, Wilford Billy Haven, should be given a 5th straight term at the helm or to give First Vice President Dr. Donovan Bennett his first term in office. The two will face off for local cricket's top job at the Jamaica Cricket Association's annual general meeting and voting congress at the Jamaica Conference Center in downtown Kingston tomorrow morning, starting at 11. Haven, the chief executive officer of the state-run Chase Fund, has been at the helm for over a decade. He first took power after defeating Milton Henry in 2013, then turned back the challenges of Fritz Harris in 2016 and Martin Eaton in 2019. He was returned unopposed in 2021. Bennett, the chairman of the Cricket West Indies medical panel, says Jamaica has declined as a cricketing force in the region, and that's his main motivation to set things right. He told Nationwide Sports a short while ago that he's confident of winning. However, says he's mindful that elections are won on the day.
If what I've been told translates into votes, then I should do okay. Then I should be all right. This is all I can say. But there's always that factor that people will tell you what you want to hear, right? So I'm just being very careful. I have gotten a very good response, right, to the people who I've spoken to. But like I said before, if that translates into votes, then I should be okay.
Bennett, who is attached to St. Elizabeth Cricket, says he also enjoys the support of more than half of the JCA board members.
We have overwhelming support on the board, Of the current board of 18 members, we have support of 13.
Dr. Donovan Bennett. For full disclosure, we tried without success to get Haven for a comment on the election. Dr. Bennett has on his slate the likes of Fritz Harris and Dr. Akshay Mansingh as his first and second vice president candidates respectively, and Kerry Scott for the post of treasurer. Jamaica and Manchester City star striker Khadija Bunny Shaw could be out for the rest of the season, and we're just getting some reports coming out of Great Britain that the striker, who limped off during Manchester City's 5-0 win over West Ham on Sunday in the Women's Premier League to put them atop the standings, she scored 2 first-half goals. Head coach Gareth Taylor said that after the game it was a touch and go as to whether she was going to continue in the match, implying that the injury did not seem serious. But now they are reporting that the club fears that she will not play again this season amid concern she has a broken foot, and Shaw would be a massive loss to a team currently locked in a fierce title battle with Chelsea. City are 3 points clear at the top of the Women's Soccer League table as they stand, though the Blues do have a game in hand. The Jamaican international has played a huge part in putting Manchester City at the top, scoring 21 goals in just 18 league appearances. Finally, in sports at this time, Liverpool's title challenge in the English Premier League suffered a major dent today. They crashed 2-0 to Everton at Goodison Park in the Merseyside derby. Jarrad Brantwaite's first-half goal and a towering header from Dominic Calvert-Lewin after the break gave Everton the first Merseyside derby win at home since October 2010.
Godfrey, Brantwaite! Calvert-Lewin on the line! Goodison Bedlam! Brantwaite may have forced it in. Calvert-Lewin made super sure, and Everton lead the derby. By McNeil, up gets Calvert-Lewin! Everton's number 9! Gladys Street and Everton joyfully to warn of their neighbours. What have you got?
Liverpool remains second in the standings, 3 points behind leaders Arsenal, but they could be replaced in second by the champions Manchester City, who will visit the capital tomorrow to face Brighton and Hove Albion. Meanwhile, Manchester United outscored the relegation-bound Sheffield United by 4-2. In other results, Crystal Palace are virtually safe after a 2-0 win over Newcastle United at Selhurst Park, while Bournemouth, they stopped Wolverhampton Wanderers by 1-0. And it's now time for the Nationwide Olympic Facts, sponsored by Fontana Pharmacy.
This is Nationwide's Olympic Facts, brought to you by Fontana Pharmacy. It's all good inside. This is Nationwide's Olympic Facts, brought to you by Fontana Pharmacy. It's all good inside.
Did you know that Elaine Thompson-Herah is the first woman to win the sprint double at consecutive Olympics? Yes, that's a fact. Elaine Thompson-Herah won the 100 and 200 meters at the 2016 Rio Olympics before repeating the feat at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics.
That was Nationwide's Olympic Facts, brought to you by Fontana Pharmacy. It's all good inside.
Michelle McRae-Smith knows her Olympic facts, right? We're going to be having this every evening as we count down to the games of the 33rd Olympiad to be held in Paris in the summer. And of course, Nationwide 90 FM is your exclusive radio carrier of the Olympic Games. That's sports. We're going to be back with more at 6:05.
Sports at 5 was brought to you by Total Tools. They almost always have it.
Hyundai, the home of modern premium affordable vehicles. Call us at 876-630-1511. The time by Hyundai is
5:33.
You didn't know the government decreased JUTC bus fares? Yes, it's now 70 for adults, 25 for children, and 30 for pensioners. And in April, fares will go down even further to 50 for adults, 20 for children, and 25 for pensioners.
The temperature by the office of the Prime Minister is
32 degrees Celsius here in the nation's capital, Kingston. It's 29 in the western city, Montego Bay.
Is your money idling when it could be thriving? With CIBC Caribbean's fixed deposit offering, you can take charge of your cash. With 50,000 Jamaican to start, choose terms from 30 days to 2 years. Lock in your funds and enjoy premium rates guaranteed to grow your wealth. Whether you're eyeing short or long-term gains, our fixed deposit account puts you firmly in control of your money. Now is the time to open a CIBC fixed deposit account and start earning more today. CIBC, ambitions made real.
Welcome deluxe, the cream cracker that rises to the top.
So crisp, so light, so buttery.
When you good, you just good. Hey, at the national flavor, you go want to buy this bag. So good, it's just so good. Welcome deluxe, the cream cracker that rises to the top.
So crisp, so light, so buttery.
National Baking Company, just so good.
Do you owe the NWC? Don't worry. The NWC's Pay and Save program can help you. Yes, you can get a 10 to 20% discount off when you pay balances that are 90 days or older. And if you can't pay everything in full, you can enter into a payment arrangement. Take advantage of this great opportunity by visiting any NWC commercial office island-wide. For more information about the NWC's Pay and Save program, visit nwcjamaica.com or call 888-NWC. Conditions apply.
Taboo topics, bulletins after dark,
riveting discussions,
celebrity news and interviews,
topics that are shunned by society,
and everything else in between.
Boyatings After Dark with Kareem Boyatings each and every Wednesday, 8 to 11 p.m.
Boyatings After Dark.
No topic is too taboo or hard to discuss. Come get your mind blown and your curiosity explored.
Boyatings After Dark.
Good afternoon. It's 5:36 on Wednesday, 4th, 2024. It's time for the cover story. I am Siobhan Campbell.
Wednesday, 4th, 2024?
4 April. You know 4th month.
April 24, 2024.
2024.
I'm Said Bernard, top of the afternoon to you, our listeners and viewers. And we are now in the cover story. We turn our eyes to guidelines for expulsion in schools. It was recently revealed that at least 3 children were summarily dismissed from St. James High School by Principal Joseph Williams. The mother of one of the students say her 16-year-old daughter was dismissed in January after a 2-second video was posted of her sharing a kiss with another girl.
The mother of the teen in question says was unable to get her child into another institution. It wasn't until last Monday that the girl was enrolled in a private school. Chairman of the school's board, Christopher McCurdy, says the body has not authorized the expulsion of the girl or any other student since 2022.
From where I sit, the child has not been expelled from the school. A matter of fact, no child, since I've been chairman, has been expelled from St. James High School. Not a single one. I have not signed off on a single expulsion for a single child since assuming responsibility there. My tenure started in 2022.
According to the board chairman, who was speaking on Nationwide at 5 on Monday evening, Principal Williams has repeatedly circumvented the Ministry of Education's code and kicked students out without the board's approval.
The principal has not brought any action to the board to suggest that there were students who had this behavior and they are looking at expelling or suspending for the board to make a decision.
What are you saying, Mr. Chairman?
I'm saying it to you just like it is, Cliff.
So the principal, Joseph Williams, is acting entirely on his own volition. He's off on a frolic of his own without any reference to his board?
You know, I am not here to chastise the principal on his behavior, but I'm quite certain that if one were to walk the streets of St. James, and if you were to speak to teachers and students and parents at St. James High School, you would come to your own conclusion as to his behavior and how he operates.
Mm-hmm. Christopher McCurdy, the chairman of the board of St. James High School, the high school at the center of this controversy. This afternoon, we want to look at the guidelines for dismissing students from school. And for that conversation, we're joined by President of the Jamaica Association of Chairmen of Secondary Institutions, Courtney Winter, and the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools, Linvern Wright. Good morning, Good evening, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Let's start with you, Mr. Winter. As the president of the chairman of secondary institutions, do you find it is within the power of a principal to have a student, as they say, excluded from an education institution?
Good evening, Siobhan and Sahid. Thank you for inviting me on.
We as governance individuals within the school, we have a green book, which most people refer to as the Bible. It's the education regulations of 1980.
Yes.
And the section that principally deals with the exclusion or, in fact, the suspension or disciplinary action for students is section 30, which most boards familiarize themselves with. And per that set of regulations, the only person or the board is the only person in that chain that can exclude a student from any public institution or educational institution. That is, I think it's very clear in the procedures as it is set out in the regs.
Mm-hmm. And Linvern Wright, is that your assessment of the situation as well as the president of the Secondary School Association?
Yes, and Section 30 deals with that.
So walk us through Section 30, gentlemen. Give us and the listeners a meticulous understanding of what takes place. So I have a student there, I am a student, I've committed an infraction, right? The principal or the competent authority decides that, hey, we need to have a disciplinary action against this child, likely expulsion. What takes place from there?
So, I don't know. Well, you want to go ahead, Chair?
I didn't.
Or you want me to? Yes.
So who's going to take it? Linville. Courtney, you're going ahead, or Linville?
All right. So let me take it, Linville. The way I understand it.
Yeah.
So
okay.
A principal has the authority to suspend a student up to 10 days, and those are school days.
Mm-hmm.
Right? During that period, a report is made to the board. The board then makes a decision whether or not that infraction should be investigated, and they will pass it on to what's called a personnel committee.
Mm-hmm.
The personnel committee then investigates that infraction within those 10 suspension days.
Mm-hmm.
After the investigation of the matter, the board the personnel committee then makes a recommendation to the board, and I think they have 3 or 4 choices. One is to reinstate the student with or without reprimand,
mm-hmm.
and in fact, they can also reprimand the parent or the guardian.
Oh, really? They can reprimand the parent or the guardian?
Yeah, I think the reg says that as well.
Continue.
The second choice is to further suspend the student for no more than 5 school days. And the third option of the board is to instruct the principal to exclude permanently the student from attending the institution. So, in a nutshell, that is the process as it is set out in the regs.
And before Siobhan comes in here, the investigation proponent of it, who makes that up? Say the personnel committee does that investigation. Does that mean speaking with the child themselves to understand why such offense was taken, speaking with the parent or guardian? What does that investigation entail?
The investigation would look at the charges that were brought against a student. The regs provide also for the student's guardian or parents to be present. Even although it is silent on this other particular issue, I think for best practices, the parents and the student is given the option to have representation in that investigation or that meeting in which a charge has been heard. So, yes, the personnel committee, who is a committee of the board and is instructed by the board, is the one that carries out the investigation based on the charges that are brought against that student.
And may I just say also it should include the student council representative.
The student council representative.
Right, yeah.
And that would help to further the account of natural justice in having representation.
Right. So the child should have a representative there, of his peer. So yes.
So stay with us, gentlemen. We're up on a break.
Clearing personal, non-commercial shipments at the port? Avoid the wait. Request a contactless clearance through your agent today. It's more efficient. It's secure. The time by the Jamaica Customs Agency is
5:45.
Accelerate your career with the right ally. Mono School of Business and Management. Explore our suite of highly ranked, specialized, globally competitive graduate degrees, including our internationally accredited MBA program. At MSBM, we nurture critical thinkers and innovative leaders, placing our graduates in a league of their own. Join the community of trailblazers making an impact at home and abroad. Apply online today. Global knowledge, regional solutions.
Call me shrewd. I am getting in when the markets are attractively priced.
Call me smart. I am getting set to capitalize when the markets have increased potential. Call me savvy. I have a mix of wise investments, so I'm earning no matter the season.
They're all investing in Sagicor Investments Sigma Global Funds, like our US dollar Sigma Global Equity and Sigma Real Growth. Never settle for less than your dreams. Start investing now in Sigma Global Funds. Call 888 Sagicor to speak with a Sagicor Investments Wealth Advisor. Conditions apply.
Welcome back to the cover story. As we touch upon this matter of expulsion from schools due to recent incidents, some eyebrows have been raised about a particular matter where a child was essentially removed from an institution due to a allegation that she had what would be considered a chups, as the mother put it, with another girl, and due to the actions of the principal, she was taken out of that school and had difficulty finding a further institution to place the child in. We're joined by the president of the Jamaica Association and chairman of secondary institutions, Courtney Winter, and president of the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools, Lynn Vern Wright. So let me go with you, Lynn Vern Wright. We're talking about the role of the student council, and this is key because I think a lot of Jamaican students believe the student council is essentially just a body where you elect your favorite, essentially the school favorite, but that body has quite a few powers and authority, especially in this matter of representing students during these disciplinary hearings.
I just put in a comment that it may be just the same in politics too.
Good one. Touche. So as it relates to the student council presidency, as my friend Siobhan asked, the importance of it.
So you want me to just explain it?
Yes, Lidburn.
Well, you're making the point, very clearly. In fact, whenever there is an election at my school or any school that I have run, one of the things I have always fought to be clear about is that this is not a popularity contest. Really and truly, the student council president is supposed to be someone who meets with the principal frequently to talk about things. He represents you. He's supposed to assist, anything you're discussing regarding a student's discipline. I mean, sometimes you can really invite them to be there. They can be, they don't have to be. But, in the interest of fairness, you try to get them there in many instances. But they are critical, and they ought to be people who understand these rules and the regulations, especially in relation to students, just the same. Mm-hmm. So it's a critical role that I think our students need to take seriously.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Wright, I have to ask you.
Yes.
Because a lot of persons are asking the question, and to my mind, quite reasonably so. Kissing someone, two females kissing or chupsing or however it's being characterized, yeah? What does that breach?
Now, here's where I don't want to go. I am not aware of the rules at St. James. I think the matter is before the board, and I have chosen not to comment on it. So I just leave it at that. I understand there's a side in the public, that's dealing with whatever. And fairly, I have no issue with that.
Let me put that question another way, Mr. Wright. What would you consider, because this is not simply just the rules of the school, because this matter of expulsions and suspensions is the education regulations. So what instance would arise that would genuinely, on a first offense, because remember this is a first offense we're talking about, rise to the level of expelling an individual from an education institution?
Well, what the code says, because I said, you didn't even have to call us. You could just go to section 30. One of the things that it says in section 30, and it's actually section 30. Let me just find that. Right. Section 30, 1A. The principal of an educational institution, a public education institution may suspend from the institution for a period not exceeding 10 days any student, A, whose conduct, in his opinion, is of such a nature that his presence in that institution, I guess her presence too, is having or is likely to have a detrimental effect on the discipline of the institution. So so in the discretion of the principal, if it's likely to have a detrimental effect on the discipline of the institution, then it is something that the principal could consider to suspend a child for.
But don't you
the
think...
Expulsion now is about the Board of Management.
Okay.
It's after investigation, the Board of Management will have to look as to the egregiousness of the act and decide on that.
Interesting. So you're saying, really and truly, Mr. Wright, that it's a subjective test?
I didn't hear you.
You're saying...
As it says whose conduct, in his opinion, is of such a nature that is present in that institution. And let me tell you something. Different institutions have different standards.
Right.
Because I can tell you, and that's one of the reasons I don't want to get into what's happening at St. James like that. Because there are some institutions where some things are seen as huge. And there are some institutions, because I hear people talk about schools, Lord, in my time that couldn't happen, and people are in school, that kind of thing. You have that sort of thing. And then there are other people who think that, boy, that is too trivial a matter to really be taking it like that. But again, you understand things differently in terms of, because I think what really happens in the case of St. James is more a procedural issue. Rather than a matter of the principal not having a right to do whatever and that sort of thing. And I think we need to discuss it as a procedural issue. But the fact is that a principal... Because let me give you an instance. In my school, for example, and in many schools, you would catch a student with a cutting implement, But if it is that, when at a school you have a history, for example, a student has been stabbed, your Board of Management may decide now that we're not tolerating that any at all,
Given the local circumstances of that school.
Right. You follow the point I'm making? But
yes.
Another school that has not had that, the local... So I'm just using that to say context is going to determine something.
Yes. But even then...
Understand, yeah.
But even then, Mr. Wright, it's quite clear that this is not on the principal alone to decide. It has to go to the board.
I'm fine. I'm just speaking of the suspension in relation to the principal. In his opinion, is like to have a detrimental effect.
Oh, okay.
You do whatever. So I'm not disputing anything like that. No.
But then let's go further, Mr. Winter, because the board is not necessarily the final port of call. The parent and the student council has a further appeal, do they not?
No. Yes. In the case of an exclusion, the only other option that student or parent has would be to appeal to the minister or the Ministry of Education in this case.
Yes.
And in that instance, the minister can unilaterally decide if the student goes back to the school, or must she make other provisions in, say, consultation with the school's board, etc.?
Right. So that's an interesting question, because in some instances, because of the general principle around not leaving any student behind, there are principals who, even though the board excludes that student, will work with other principals to try to facilitate that student getting into another institution. If that's the case, then in most cases, the sending principal will not put that on the record of the student, even though they were excluded by the board.
Interesting.
If the principal is not successful in facilitating that student into another institution, then it is then turned over to the Ministry of Education, where the Ministry of Education is then will have to either make a declaration that the student be reinstated, or will then try to find a place in another institution for that student.
And I think one of the issues in this instant case was that they had to enroll the child in a private institution because they could not find, apparently, a place to place the child in a public institution, but that came at significant cost to the mother. Is it the responsibility of the ministry to ensure the child either A, goes to a public institution, or B, somehow ensures that the cost to the parent is limited?
I cannot speak, to be honest, with what the process of the Ministry of Education is. What I do know is that once the school excludes that child, then it now becomes an issue for the Ministry of Education. But as I said before, there are principals that I'm aware of who will try to facilitate that child into another institution.
Well, I mean, you're right. We can look to the regulations, because Section 30 of the Education Regulations, Section 35, that's 30 subsection 5, says a student who has been permanently excluded for disciplinary reasons from a public educational institution may be admitted to another public educational institution if a confidential report of the circumstances surrounding the exclusion is given to the principal of that other institution.
And may is the operative word, you know. But the point is that, and I'm not saying it ought not to be. I will tell you that the general principle among principals is that there is normally that kind of negotiation. Because I have taken students from schools, other schools have taken students from schools I have run. And that really is a principle that really is out there. Sometimes you watch a student in a school, and if it is that you figure that environment really is one that child is not thriving in, you watch academic performance, you watch that he's in all kinds of groups, that sort of thing. Sometimes you have a discussion with parents before, and there are parents who opt to find, but with your assistant as a principal, another school, because another environment might be something that is more helpful to them, given what is taking place in the institution in terms of the child's own, in relation to the child's own detriment. So you have, some of these things happen, but when an expulsion happens, many principals usually work with other schools to ensure that the child gets into another school.
So let me ask you, Linvern Wright, who does it fall upon to ensure that the child gets into another school? Out of all the individuals and entities involved, is it the onus on the parent, is the onus on the ministry, or is the onus on the school that is excluding the child?
I just said, for all of us, the onus is on any good educator, any good parent, a good minister to do all of that. And I will say I hardly know of any instance where that doesn't happen.
Yes, gentlemen.
I would add, though, that whatever happens in terms of a transfer must be approved by the ministry.
Yes.
And that's even when you're putting the child in a private institution from a public?
Yes.
No, I don't think private to public. Public to private.
Well, not public to private.
Right.
But public to public.
But in an instance where the child has been excluded from a public institution and the parent is being told the only available place is a private institution, that sign-off must come from the ministry?
No. I don't know that.
No, I'm not aware of that.
But the ministry might be involved. And because the truth is that private institutions are also registered with the ministry.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to point out, gentlemen, subsection 7 of that regulation 30, except in special cases, a student shall only be suspended or excluded from a public educational institution after other efforts being key there, have been made to effect an improvement in the conduct of the student. Based on my reading of subsection 7, gentlemen, it means that a suspension or an expulsion is a matter of last resort.
No, two things are critical there. Special cases.
Excepting special cases.
Right. I'm saying accepting special cases, I think, is also critical. And I think it's critical in terms of the interventions that ought to be done. Right. So those two things we have to, would be up for some kind of discussion.
So given I asked that question because I wanted to respond to this, and we have to go. So I'll take a quick response. Based on this case, don't you think, based on what subsection 7 says, don't you think it's high time that the ministry actually amends these regulations to actually outline certain things that would arise to a suspension or an expulsion, and outline for clarity that there ought to be steps taken before you get to a suspension or an expulsion?
There is a bill now that I think the ministry is looking at that. It's just that the bill has been long in coming, maybe over 20 years. It's just that it has been slow.
I don't know if that is slow or
so
just
you'll agree.
stalled.
So you'll agree with me then that there needs to be some amendment to further outline these things so that we stop having these issues.
Most people in education would agree with them. It's just that we're saying that it has been long in coming. This is something that has been since more than 20 years now. The bill has been incoming, so you might have heard the minister speaking to that. And she has been pushing to have it passed, so it's something that people are looking forward to. Yes.
Yeah, there's no argument that the regs need to be modernized. But we also have to recognize that no regulation is going to be able to capture every incident or every case. But, I think there's no question the regs need to be updated.
Understood.
Because there are also other areas within the regs.
I'm sorry, but we're out of time. We're up on the news. So, President of the Jamaica Association of Chairmen of Secondary Institutions, Courtney Winter, and President of the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools, Lynn Wright. Thank you for your time, gentlemen, and have a good afternoon.
Good. Yes.
The news now at 6.
Say hello to peace of mind and goodbye to worry with Guardian Life's new Ultimate Provider Plan, and secure your medical expenses in the event of critical illness today. Call 888-367-5433 for details.
The time by Guardian Life is
clock.
Upgrade your kitchen and bathroom to the next level with Unique Living. They're the ultimate destination for all your kitchen and bathroom needs, from luxurious shower systems to exquisite faucets, vanities, sinks, toilets, closets, and more. They have it all. Visit shop number 6, 30 Dunrobin Avenue, Kingston 10, or call them at 876-755-3661. Elevate your space with Unique Living, where quality meets expectations.
Nationwide headlines at 6.
Good evening with the headlines at 6. I'm Mahiri Stewart. President of the Judicial Committee of the UK-based Privy Council, Lord Reid, says he has asked the British government to invite senior judges from the jurisdictions that they serve to sit with them in an effort to understand the conditions of those countries from which appeal cases come. Lord Reid made the statement on Wednesday while delivering a virtual lecture at an event put on by the Mona campus of the University of the West Indies. The lecture comes as the debate continues about whether Jamaica should continue to cling to the Privy Council as its final appellate court or accede to the civil and criminal jurisdictions of the Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ.
Having the benefit of the opinion of a judge with direct experience of local conditions can only enhance the quality of the Privy Council's decision-making. I've therefore asked the UK government to consider a proposal to invite senior judges from outside the UK to sit with us again on the Privy Council. This isn't currently possible in relation to most of the Privy Council jurisdictions under the legislation which currently governs appointments. The exceptions include judges of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, the High Court of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Supreme Court of Jamaica, who can sit on the Privy Council if they are first appointed as Privy Councillors. At present, none of the judges from these jurisdictions are Privy Councillors, but I am hopeful that that position may change before long.
Lord Reid says the Privy Council is still eager to serve Jamaica.
is felt throughout all the jurisdictions we serve. As judges, it is our vocation to give people a reason to believe that justice is possible. We have a duty to do our best to make justice happen every day, to try to make the world more just for all our citizens. I'm very grateful for the opportunities we have to serve the citizens of Jamaica and the other Privy Council jurisdictions. It is a responsibility that I and my colleagues take very seriously and an enormous privilege.
Lord Reid, President of the Judicial Committee of the UK-based Privy Council. The Minister of Agriculture, Floyd Green, says the ministry will step up its mitigation efforts as farmers across the island continue to struggle amid the ongoing drought. He provided the update at Wednesday's post-cabinet press briefing.
We're now focusing on Clarendon, St. Elizabeth, Manchester, Trelawney, Westmoreland, St. Anne and Portland. We've allocated an additional $24 million to the trucking of water, which is part of a bigger program that amounts to about $90 million. We've targeted about 6 areas, highly productive zones, that we're building retention, catchment areas. We have earmarked over $8 million to that drive. We have completed one already in Hindstown. We're doing some work in Lucky Pen in St. Mary to ensure that when the rain does come, that our farmers are better able to capture that water and to use that water for their agricultural enterprise.
Floyd Green, Minister of Agriculture. Minister Green says additional water trucks will be deployed to assist farmers in St. Anne, St. Elizabeth, and St. Catherine. Some residents of Mount Pleasant in northwest Clarendon are upset with their Member of Parliament, the JLP's Philip Henriquez, over the state of the roads in their community. They say if the roads are not repaired, they will find it hard to support Henriquez if he decides to seek a new term in office at the next general election. But MP for Northwest Clarendon, the JLP's Philip Henriquez, is denying claims that he has neglected the roads in the Mount Pleasant community in his constituency. Mr. Henriquez told our news centre that the roads were deplorable long before he took over as MP in September 2020. Shalois Michael tells us more.
Philip Henriquez says he's been working to address the road conditions in Mount Pleasant since he assumed the chairmanship of the Northwest Clarendon constituency. He says his work so far has been hampered by a lack of funds.
When we took over in 2020, the constituency, the road network had been significantly and severely neglected. And we've been working on as many as possible over the last 3 to 4 years. And we've been doing quite well with that. But unfortunately, we have not been able to reach all of the roads that we would have liked to have reached. So what we are trying to do with the Garlogie Road, especially that Mount Pleasant coming into the school there, Garlogie going over Banana Ground side, is that we're going to be discussing the Sparks program as the Prime Minister had announced, and we're going to be looking and seeing how we can get some of those roads that you speak about right now repaired. Yes, for sure we'd have liked to have had it done already, but unfortunately the flow of funds hasn't allowed for that.
He says the main roads that connect the communities of Mount Pleasant and Banana Ground to the Garlogie Primary and Infant School will be addressed under the government's much-touted SPARK program. SPARK stands for Shared Prosperity Through Accelerated Improvement to a Road Network.
Yes, for sure we'd have liked to have had it done already, but unfortunately the flow of funds hasn't allowed for that. But it is a priority on our list, especially as it is near and leading up to and away from a school, and so we are definitely going to be working on that through the Sparks program.
Under the $40 billion Spark program, MPs through the Constituency Development Fund should organize community consultations to determine which roads will be repaired. Based on Prime Minister Andrew Holness's guidelines, the consultations were to be completed by the end of March. However, Northwest Clarendon has yet to have a meeting with the CDF, despite being one of the first to submit their community consultancy dates. Meanwhile, MP Henriquez is dismissing claims that he's been missing in action in his constituency, especially in the Mount Pleasant community. He says he has brought several welfare assistance projects to his constituents.
We do have a lot of things that we do to assist our constituents other than fixing the roads. I know sometimes that's the most important thing, but we help with education tremendously for many kids to go to school through the education program within the CDF, among all the areas within the CDF, from funerals to welfare assistance, with entrepreneurial assistance to people to help them with their businesses, earn fund money, and many other areas within the program. So just as one quick tidbit, since we're talking about school, is that we assisted 750 different households throughout constituency of Northwest Clarendon in the last year. We are doing significant amount of work to assist the constituents and the people, and we will be getting to the road under the Sparks program as quickly as possible.
Shaloy Smichael for Nationwide News.
Those were the headlines at 6. I'm Mahiri Stewart. Sports is next.
Call me shrewd. I am getting in when the markets are attractively priced.
Call me smart. I am getting set to capitalize when the markets have increased potential. Call me savvy. I have a mix of wise investments, so I'm earning no matter the season.
They're all investing in Sagicor Investments Sigma Global Funds, like our US dollar Sigma Global Equity and Sigma Real Growth. Never settle for less than your dreams. Start investing now in Sigma Global Funds. Call 888 Sagicor to speak with a Sagicor Investments Wealth Advisor. Conditions apply.
Outperform, outlast. With top performance. Jackama. Reliable, full stop, not comma. We have the expertise for drilling and demolition. We have the power tools for plumbers and electrician. Fancy select tools, free parts and free repairs. Free parts, free repairs. 2 to 3 years. Hilton, available at Delta Supply, 106 Hagley Park Road. Call us at 876-302-61114. Delta Supply. We service what we sell.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to Sports here on Nationwide 90 FM. I'm Wayne Walker. In just a short time, we'll be giving you details on an impressive win by Excelsior High School in the Spalding Cup, a playoff against Manchester High School. The Grey Shield champions were just too good for Manchester. We'll give you a bit more details on some reaction from the different camps in just a bit. But before we tell you that, let's go to presidency of the Jamaica Cricket Association. Will be on the line tomorrow when 99 delegates go to the polls to decide if the incumbent Wilford Billy Haven gets a 5th straight term, or Dr. Donovan Bennett is elected for the first time in office. The two will face off for local cricket's top job at the JCA annual general meeting and voting congress tomorrow at the Jamaica Conference Center in downtown Kingston, starting at 11. The chief executive officer of the state-run Chase Fund, has been at the helm of the JCA for over a decade. He first took power after defeating Milton Henry in 2013, then turned back the challenges of Fritz Harris first in 2016 and Martin Neat in 2019. He returned unopposed as president in 2021. Bennett, chairman of the West Indies Cricket Medical Panel, says Jamaica has declined as a cricketing force in the region, and that's his main motivation to set things right. He told Nationwide Sports today that he's confident of winning. However, he's mindful that elections are won on the day.
If what I've been told translates into votes, then I should do okay. Then I should be all right. This is all I can say. But there's always that factor that people will tell you what you want to hear, right? So I'm just being very careful. I have gotten a very good response, right, to the people who I've spoken to. But like I said before, if that translates into votes, then I should be okay.
Bennett, who is attached to St. Elizabeth Cricket, says he also enjoys the large support of more than half of the JCA board members.
We have overwhelming support on the board, of the current board of 18 members. We have support of 13.
All right, that's Dr. Donovan Bennett. For full disclosure, we tried without success to get Haven for a comment on the election. Dr. Bennett has on his slate the likes of Fritz Harris and Dr. Akshaman Singh as his first and second vice president candidates, respectively, and Kerry Scott for the post of treasurer. Grey Shield champions Excelsior High are now All-Ireland Schoolboy Cricket champions as well. The Mountain View Avenue-based institution defeated rural area kings Manchester High by 185 runs a short time ago at Melbourne on the second day of their three-day Spalding Cup playoff. Set 403 to win. Manchester High were dismissed for 217. Pajay Nelson top scored at 69 and Jade Moore 34 against DeMarco Scott 4 wickets and captain Michael Clark 3. Earlier, Excelsior, who resumed their second innings this morning on 82 for 4, went on to make 255 all out for an overall lead of 402. Clark top scored with 57. He got good support from Tariq Forbes at 39, Jameer Daly 36, and David Dwyer 32. Captain Brian Barnes bagged the 4 for 56 bowling for Manchester, while Barrington Simpson, he weighed in with 3 for 48 and Matthew Morgan 2 for 68. Coach of Excelsior, Kirkland Bailey, says he was proud of his players.
The Excelsior boys really came out all guns blazing and have delivered under pressure. This was the All-Ireland battle and my boys came out with the bat from early and set the tone yesterday. I thought we pushed back Manchester and they were kind of in awe. And when we wrapped them up quickly for 7-1 yesterday, we really put the cat amongst the pigeon. Leading by 146 and with the batting we had, we knew once we batted for at least a session and a half, we would get a total that would seem insurmountable. Asking them to get 400 on a surface that was kind of a bit tricky with the bowling we had. We knew we just had to be patient, take the catches when they presented themselves and we'd win at the end of the day. We weren't so clinical in the field as we ought to be and thus they made over 200. But Manchester is a quality team even though we got them for 7-1 early because they have good batters in the lineup and I'm really proud of my boys for getting it done in 2 days.
That's Kirkland Bailey, coach of Manchester. Barry Barnes says Excelsior won from day one.
I know the task was very hard, but we were not going to lie down and play dead. I think we tried. We got some decisions that never went our way. But that part of the game, when you have your 3 main batters without any significant score on the board, we know it was going to be a hard task. But kudos to Excelsior. I think they were the better team. They played extremely well. They have won from the very first day with that total and stick out for a little bit. So I must say congrats to Excelsior. I think they give us a real good fight and showed what it means to win these sort of competitions.
Barry Barnes, coach of the Manchester High School team. Liverpool's title challenge in the English Premier League suffered a major dent today. They crashed 2-0 to Everton at Goodison Park in the Merseyside derby. Jarrad Brantwaite's first half goal and the towering header from Dominic Calvert-Lewin after the break gave Everton their first Merseyside derby win at home since October 2010.
Godfrey! Brantwaite! Calvert-Lewin on the line! Goodison Bedlam! Brantwaite may have forced it in! Calvert-Lewin made super sure! And Everton lead the derby! By McNeil, up gets Calvert-Lewin! Everton's number 9! Gladys Street and Everton joyfully to warn of their neighbours! What have you got?
Liverpool remains second in the standings, 3 points behind leaders Arsenal, but could be replaced by champions Manchester City in second when they visit Brighton and Hove Albion in the capital tomorrow. Meanwhile, Manchester United outscored the relegation-bound Sheffield United 4-2 at Old Trafford.
Oh, Nana, that's a mistake. Bogle is onto this, and it's put it away. And against the run of play, Sheffield United take the lead through Jayden Bogle. Maguire with a flick. Harry Maguire steps forward when Manchester United needed a rapid response. Palmer setting it up here for Osborne and Brereton Diaz. It's another tale of the unexpected at Old Trafford as Sheffield United hit the front again. It's Bruno Fernandes on the hour. Come up the hour, come up the man, and the man so often for Manchester United is Bruno Fernandes. Oh! Trust Bruno Fernandes to come up with something special. Fernandes latching onto this and Hoyland! He ends a 6-game drought.
In other results, today, Crystal Palace are virtually safe after a 2-0 win over Newcastle United at Selhurst Park, while Bournemouth stopped Wolverhampton Wanderers by 1-0. The 2022-23 Jamaica Women's Premier League champions, Fraser's Whip, will be the country's representatives in the inaugural CONCACAF Champions Cup. Fraser's Whip is among 11 teams that will participate in the tournament and the only one from the Caribbean. The tournament includes a preliminary round followed by a group stage and a centralized Final Four. Canada, Costa Rica, El Salvador and Panama will each have one team in the competition. Meanwhile, Mexico and USA will each have 3 teams in the tournament. The competition will crown the region's women's club champions. It's also the sole pathway through which clubs in CONCACAF can qualify for the new FIFA Women's Club World Cup, which FIFA says it's committed to launching in the near future, whenever that is, yeah? The Devon Biscuits in Sports All-Ireland Primary Schools Athletics Championships will return to the local track and field landscape with its 42nd staging. Over 6,000 athletes from more than 130 schools will participate in the event May 1 to 22. The championships will unfold in 4 stages. First, the Eastern Championships at Stadium East starting May 1. This will be followed by Central Championships, GC Foster College, May 6 to 8. Western Champs, TETS, May 9 to 11, and the grand finale taking place at the National Stadium May 20 to 22. Minister of Sport Olivia Grange explains the prize monies that will be awarded to the top 3 schools from each region.
The regional champions will get prize money of $250,000 with $200,000 for second place and $150,000 for third place. The prize money that I announced here this morning is only the start. There is more to come. The prize money for the first place champion will be $350,000. And we will up the numbers by $100,000 each for the other categories. Because I think it's important to encourage you youngsters as you put your heart and soul into representing Jamaica, representing your school and representing your community.
Olivia Grange, brand manager for Devon Biscuits, Shireen Brown, says they're happy to partner with InSports in unearthing and nurturing the country's young talent.
Devon Biscuits has been provided with the platform to change lives, make big impact while unearthing talents in various sporting disciplines. Thank you, athletes, for your dedication and your hard work. But most importantly, keep being an inspiration to your peers, your school community, and to your country. Devon Biscuits, as the title sponsor, believe that with adequate resources, the right mentorship, and with a supportive community, anything is possible.
That's brand manager for Devon Biscuits, Shireen Brand. That's sports.
For all your scales and food processing equipment, call Advanced Scales and Equipment Limited at 876-968-9612-5. The time by Advanced Scales and Equipment Limited is
6:21.
Live exquisite this year with new arrival black and chrome fixtures for your home at Unique Living. Select from a wide variety of rain shower systems, fabulous faucets, and stylish sinks to suit your kitchen and bathrooms. Get uncompromised quality and style unique to you. Shop everything new at Unique Living, Jamaica's leading shower and faucets provider. Visit shop number 630 Dunrobin Avenue, Kingston 10, or call 876-755-3661-2.
Variety is the spice of life. That's not just true for entertainment, it's true for investing too. While stocks, bonds, and cash are effective, there are other credible investment options out there. These are alternative investments, ranging from digital options like cryptocurrencies to old school investments like gold, real estate, and private equity. You can invest on your own or via a fund with a curated portfolio of investment options.
Visit barita.com/opportunities for more growth coach insights.
Public Opinion is brought to you by Cleasing Industrial Supplies Limited, Industrial Automation and Control Solutions.
Good evening and welcome to Public Opinion. I'm Mahiri Stewart. A special good evening to our friends over on YouTube. We invite you also to weigh in live in the comment section on today's Public Opinion. All right. Now, the country continues to record a steady decline in the homicide rate since the start of the year. That's according to the most recent statistics published by the Jamaica Constabulary Force, JCF. The figures reveal a 14% drop in murders between January 1 and April 20 this year when compared to the same period in 2023. According to the JCF, 332 murders were recorded between January 1 and April 20. That is 56 fewer than the 388 recorded for the corresponding period. So in public today, in public opinion rather, the public, what is your reaction to the continued reduction in the country's homicide rate?
I'm ecstatic, very ecstatic about it. I'm really happy, and I'm hoping and trusting that this continue for the entire year. I just want this to continue, and it just goes to show that the government plans are really working right now the way they were supposed to work, So you have to give kudos to the government and the way that they approach this thing, long-term vision, and that is what we want for the country. Can't go back to the backward days where we have to pray for divine intervention. You get a job to do, you sit down, you analyze it, and you get the work done. And that's what this government is doing, and kudos to them, much appreciated.
Well, Adam, did you say the crime rate dropped? Well, I make sure that you say.
All right, let's take a look at our Facebook comment section. Winston says, good news. Yeah. Fabian Smith says the government is doing something. It is not as bad. Okay, there we go. Edney Powell, says Horace Chang is doing a great job and I am grateful for that. Othniel Blair says if we ball on the authorities and blame them when it increased, give them their credit when we have any reduction. Natalie Winter says this is a step in the right direction. Anthony Shakes says good news, goes to show that the investments made by the government in the force is working. Hope it continues. Wesley Cunningham JP says good move. There we go. Mark Julius says big up to the God-fearing people who are praying for this nation. A very big thanks to the JCF members who put their life on the edge to keep us safe. Philip Jackson says this is like planting a farm and it's now reaping time. The investment in the security system is now paying off. Good news. That's Facebook. Let's take a look at what people are saying over on X. Remember, today's question is, what's your reaction to the country's homicide rate pretty much showing a continued reduction? We have 9 comments here on X. Let's take a look. Shanae876 says, good news, we are moving in the right direction. Graham Jervis says, press gas, moving in the right direction. Investments in the JCF beginning to pay off. Elon Musk admirer says, government is working. Country is heading in the right direction. AMH says, average Jamaican sleeping with windows and doors open, loading. All right, what else do we have here? Darrell says, reduction in the homicide rate is great news. Still high in actual numbers, but moving in the right direction. And Annie Strong says, if the homicide rate is going down, then it is heading in the right direction. The JCF must be given all the resources needed to fight the crime monster. All right, let's take a look at our last social media section. That would be Instagram. How many comments do we have here on Instagram? We have 25. All right. Let's see what we're going on now. Let's see what we have here. Facey Michael 37 says, so where are the comments? Country's moving in the right direction and nobody's commenting. If there was something bad and scandalous, there would be overwhelming negative feedback. All right. Michael Raffington says, I celebrate because a reduction by 1 means 1 less family grieving. Probably he or she is the breadwinner, the matriarch or patriarch of the family. The emotional and financial stress placed on families is often overlooked because it's statistics. My only hope is that it is not temporary. Summers123 says, excellent. At this rate, we will be classified as peaceful by 2,956. All right. It's Me Jules says, happy. A decline in homicide means someone's life is spared. Insta Elon says, any reduction is a welcome relief to the level of anxiety and fear that most people face daily. It also means that fewer families and other loved ones will have to endure the trauma that murder brings. All right, folks. Let's take a look at the YouTube comment section. This is the time, well, unless I scroll up rather, but let me see if I can find some right here. Davian Paddy, he has one right here. He says, music to my ears. Hope it continues on a downward trend. Big up to the JCF and the government of Jamaica for a job well done. Marlene Wright says, awesome job. Let's see what else we have here. Scrolling up. What's your reaction to the reduction? Well, the continued reduction. The country's homicide rate. Scrolling through, looking for answers. I see a lot of conversation going, but I'm trying to look for some standalone comments. Going down. Robert Lewars says, good news, the government is doing a good job. What else do we have here? Casita Johnson says, good evening. PM is serious about reducing the monster crime. PM's investment is working. All right. Jason says, Operation Cleanup. Carl Welsh says, crime going down. Well done. Marva Thomas says, keep up the good work, JCF and the government. All right. What else do we have here? Scrolling up. Xavier says, country achieving and growing, yet still high price, and our citizens suffering. All right. What else do we have here? Let's scroll up a little bit more. Already read that one. Scrolling up. Okay, Leonard Seville says, it's a good indicator, but way too early to celebrate because too many people died. Still, fair enough point. If I go back to the script I was reading earlier, it says, yeah, we have it right here. 332 people have been murdered between January 1 and April 20. So that's a pretty poignant point by Leonard Seville because that's still 332 grieving families, yes? And somebody alluded to that earlier when we're going through public opinion. What else do we have here? Brian Thomas says, Major Anderson started the trend. Now Blake will continue. He's referencing Dr. Kevin Blake, the new commissioner of police. Beverly Ricketts says, thanks to DCP Fitzbailey and his team. Excellent work. Marlene P says, take it to them, C-Talk. All right. Tony Bailey says, the commish is getting a lot of support from his team. All right, folks. As always, you have the option of agreeing. You have the option of disagreeing. You have the opportunity, to voice your opinion here on Public Opinion. Thanks for listening or watching if you're on YouTube. But it's now time for the business report, so stay tuned.
Public Opinion was brought to you by Cleasing Industrial Supplies Limited, Industrial Automation and Control Solutions.
Annual eye examinations not only assess your vision but may be life-saving. Eye tests may detect serious health issues that go beyond your vision. Call IQ Optical to schedule your comprehensive eye test today.
The temperature by IQ Optical is
31 degrees Celsius in Kingston, 28 degrees Celsius in Montego Bay. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Nationwide's Business Report. I'm Mahiri Stewart. The national minimum wage and the minimum wage for industrial security guards will be increased to $15,000 per 40-hour work week effective June 1, 2024. According to the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, this change is designed to improve the wages for many Jamaicans employed in various sectors. The increase is under the Minimum Wage Act, noting that the single time rate for a work week not exceeding 40 hours will be increased to $375 per hour, and the time and a half rate will be increased to $562 per hour for any period exceeding 40 hours in any week. Additionally, the compensation for work done on a rest day or public holiday will be increased to $750 per hour. It is to be noted that only the basic minimum wage rate for industrial security guards will be increased. All other allowances and the insurance benefit remain unchanged. TikTok says it will challenge in court an, quote, unconstitutional, end quote, law that could result in it being sold or banned in the United States. President Biden has signed into law a bill which gives the social media platform's Chinese owner, ByteDance, 9 months to divest the app or it will be blocked in the US. The law has been introduced because of concerns TikTok might share user data with the Chinese government, claims it has always denied. The measure was passed as part of a package of 4 bills which also included military aid for Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and other U.S. partners in the Indo-Pacific region. It had widespread support from lawmakers, with 79 senators voting for it and 18 against. TikTok has said ByteDance is not an agent of China or any other country. ByteDance insists it is not a Chinese firm, pointing to the global investment firms that own 60% of it. And finally, the currency markets. At the close of trading today, it cost 156 Jamaican dollars and 77 cents to buy $1. It cost 193 Jamaican dollars and 43 cents to buy £1 British pound and 114 Jamaican dollars and 58 cents to buy the Canadian dollar. That's the business report. I'm Mahiri Stewart. Good evening.
Drive the most exciting new vehicles in Jamaica. Schedule your 2024 Ford Ranger pickup or Ford Everest 7-seater SUV test drive now. Call or visit KIG today.
Get up to 50% off your fave styles during the Ashley Furniture Home Store Spring Semi-Annual Sale Event. Shop 2-piece lounge sets starting at $183,998. Bedroom sets starting at $299,999. And mattresses starting at $39,999. Financing available from 6 to 36 months. Don't miss the Spring Semi-Annual Sale Event at the Ashley Furniture Home Store. This is home. Offer ends April 25. Conditions apply.
Does your bra ride up your back? Do your shoulders hurt from carrying the weight of your breasts? These are signs of an ill-fitting bra. When was the last time you were fitted by a bra fit specialist? The bra experts at LaBelle Femme will take care of you. Drop into the store at 53 Lady Musgrave Road, Tuesdays to Saturdays from 10 to 5, and you will see the difference. Or call 876-622-6091.
I stay locked to the Olympics because, of course, I'm Jamaican. What you mean?
Me, I have to tune into the Olympics, man. Because I'm always busy, but what? I have to know when Sherika Jackson beat Shakari.
Brother, I have to have every notification for the Olympics. I want to hear every run.
Now Sherika Jackson coming
every jump.
Oh, that is absolutely huge of Wayne Pinkham.
Every fling, live.
So, take us then.
Nothing can miss me.
We're always on the move.
So while we're driving, run, Elaine, run.
Jogging. Yes. Run, Watson. Win again.
Watson is now a world champion.
Or even at work.
Quick. The race has started.
We can't miss a beat because we keep it locked
to the only station
for the Paris Olympics.
Nationwide.
90
FM.
Nationwide 90.1, 90.3, 90.5, 90.7 and 90.9, and on YouTube at Nationwide 90 FM Live. Nationwide, the new revolution in media.
If it's in the public's interest, it's the nation's business during Nationwide at 5. The nation's business.
Not a mercy. This one is very classic, dedicated to all the schoolers who are taking beats.
If you've ever struggled to pass an exam, then you'll know that students today are under great pressure to get good grades and secure qualification needed to move on to higher education. The problem is that too many students are struggling alone and could really benefit from connecting with hardworking teachers and other bright students in other parts of the country and the region. Join me, Dennis Brooks, this and every Friday evening from 8 to 9, with a repeat on Saturday morning from 8 to 9. For the A-Team, a study group on radio, my team of teachers, students, and experts will break down the syllabus, giving you information, tips, and past paper questions that will help you get top grades in your upcoming exams. Follow us on Facebook Live and on Twitter and be a part of the community. It's the A-Team. Fridays at 8 p.m. with a repeat at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. It's your free extra class on radio and social media. And it's right here on Nationwide 90 FM, the revolution in media.
Hi there. Here's some good news for these trying times. Quote, "By God's word, I can see where I'm going. They throw a beam of light on my dark path." Unquote. Psalm 119, verse 105. Listen for God's word weekdays at 5:45 a.m. and 12:55 p.m. through
Oasis. Stop by for a refreshing drink and share a God perspective for the day.
Oasis. Weekdays 5:45 a.m. and 12:55 p.m. right here on Nationwide, a revolution in media.
The rebroadcast of the Oasis can be heard weekdays at 5:45 a.m.
The Oasis is brought to you by Solar Tech Jamaica. We use the gift of the sun to power our world.
Good evening. It's 6:39 and we're turning to the nation's business. I'm Siobhan Campbell.
I'm Said Bernard.
Well, we're going to be looking at the courts again. Privy Council's Lord Reid's lecture at the University of the West Indies, Mona. The president of the Judicial Committee of the UK-based Privy Council, Lord Reid, says he has asked the British government to invite senior judges from the jurisdictions that they serve to sit with them in an effort to understand the conditions of those countries from which appeal cases come. Lord Reid made the statement on Wednesday while delivering a virtual lecture at an event at the Mona campus of the University of West Indies.
The lecture was held under the theme Judicial Policy Construction by Apex Courts. The lecture comes as the debate continues about whether Jamaica should continue to cling to the Privy Council as its final appellate court or accede to the civil and criminal jurisdictions of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Here's Lord Reid's address.
How do judges decide cases? I was asked this question a few months ago by a visitor to the court who was surprised when I told him that judges decide cases by applying the law to the facts of the case. Surely, he said, your own personal values must have an impact, particularly in the kinds of hard cases that come before apex courts like the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. How else could different judges, all equally learned in the law, come to different conclusions on the outcome of a particular case? This lecture is my attempt to answer these questions by giving you an insight into the values inherent in the law itself and the ways in which they influence, constrain, and control judicial decision-making. In doing so, I'm speaking not as a legal philosopher, but as a working judge who is asked almost every day to decide difficult cases which are of considerable public importance in the jurisdictions we serve, including Jamaica. Non-lawyers sometimes think of the law as a set of rules which judges apply in a mechanical way to the facts of the cases that come before them. Some academic lawyers have a tendency to treat the law as a system of abstract propositions applied as a matter of logical analysis. But these views of the law are very different from the reality of the work of judges in the Privy Council. Let me begin by telling you about Imeo, a recent case from the Cayman Islands. It will give you some idea of what a judge like me actually does, and will also illustrate some aspects of how the law operates in practice. The case concerned a multi-billion-pound claim against an international bank, arising out of its involvement in a Ponzi scheme operated by the US financier Bernard Madoff, which collapsed during the financial crash of 2008. The claim was brought after the normal time limit for bringing a claim had expired, That time limit can, however, be extended under Cayman legislation, where the defendant deliberately committed a breach of duty in circumstances where it was unlikely to be discovered for some time. So one of the questions we had to answer was whether that exception applied. That raised some difficult questions, including what was meant in this context by a breach of duty being deliberate. Must the defendant have known that it was committing a breach, or would recklessness be enough? In other words, would it be sufficient that the defendant realized that there was a risk that it was committing a breach and unreasonably took the risk anyway? The answer to that question couldn't be found in the text of the Cayman legislation or in the UK legislation on which it was based. So how did we go about deciding the case? As law students, you probably know that different legal theorists would give different answers to that question. One view, associated with the 20th century American legal realists, is that judges decide cases based primarily on what they think would be fair on the facts in front of them. For example, Jerome Frank has claimed that judges' decisions don't result from the application of a legal rule to the facts of the case, but are the result of the judge's non-verbal hunch, which precedes any analysis and is then translated into a logical verbal account of the facts and the applicable legal rules. In this sense, Frank says judges are creative artists. Legal positivists, like H.L.A. Hart, agree that judges exercise discretion, but only in penumbral cases where general legal rules conflict or are indeterminate in their application. In these cases, their discretion is not unbounded. Rather, judges have a professional obligation to reach their decisions through a process of legal reasoning. They cannot think about the problem purely on its merits, nor can they reach their decisions on non-legal grounds. Another theory is advanced by Ronald Dworkin, who says that judges decide hard cases by trying to find, in some coherent set of principles about people's rights and duties, the best constructive interpretation of the political structure and legal doctrine of their community. On this view, the principles underlying statutes and precedents always point towards the legally correct answer. That's some of the theory. But what happens in practice? There are cases where my long experience of the law has taught me to hear something that sounds like a wrong note in a piece of music. A recent example from Jamaica concerned the conviction of the appellants Sean Campbell and others for murder. Over the course of the 64-day trial, there was a series of incidents involving the jury. A juror was discharged almost 8 weeks into the trial, reducing the total number of jurors from the usual 12 to 11. Then on the last day of the trial, the judge was informed that one of the jurors, whom I'll call Juror X, had tried to bribe all the other jurors, urging them to acquit the defendants. The trial judge couldn't discharge Juror X at that stage because under the Jamaican Jury Act, a trial for murder cannot continue with fewer than 11 jurors. The judge decided to proceed with his summing up and directed the jury to reach a verdict, reminding them that they had sworn or affirmed that they would reach a verdict in accordance with the evidence they had heard in court. By a majority of 10 to 1, the jury found the appellants guilty of murder. Juror X was then arrested and was later convicted of attempting to pervert the course of justice. When the case came before the Privy Council, we had considerable sympathy for the dilemma faced by the trial judge on the final day of what had been a long and complex criminal trial. He either had to continue with the 11 remaining jurors, including Juror X, or discharge the jury, meaning that the time and resources spent on the trial up to that date would have been wasted. But that did not mean that he was right to continue the trial. In our view, there should have been no question of allowing Juror X to continue to serve on the jury. Allowing him to continue was an infringement of the appellant's fundamental right to a fair hearing by an independent and impartial court, in accordance with Section 16 of Chapter 3 of the Jamaican Constitution. The direction the judge gave to the jury was not enough to save the situation, particularly as it took no account of a risk that the other members of the jury might have been prejudiced against the defendants as a result of Juror X's actions. Accordingly, the Privy Council concluded that the convictions should be quashed. The case was remitted then to the Jamaican Court of Appeal, who will decide whether or not there should be a retrial. The idea that a juror who had attempted to bribe the others should be permitted to continue to serve as a member of the jury sounded a wrong note as soon as I read the papers in the case. But that doesn't mean that the Privy Council decided the case on the basis of what we thought would be fair on the facts or according to a hunch. Rather, our decision was based on our analysis of the applicable legal rules, which set out a clear requirement for a fair trial and their application to the facts of the case. I heard a wrong note because I've dealt in the past with other cases concerned with juror misconduct and had a strong impression that the judge hadn't dealt with the situation correctly. But I had to go back to the authorities and consider all the arguments with my colleagues before I was sure. What happens then in a case like Primeo, where the effect of the applicable legal rule is not so clear? As I've explained, one of the issues we had to decide concerned the meaning of the word deliberate in the phrase deliberate commission of a breach of duty. Primeo submitted that a reckless breach of duty was sufficient, but the Privy Council rejected that argument. Since words used in legislation are generally intended to be given their ordinary meaning, we considered the ordinary meanings of the words deliberate and reckless in general conversation, as well as the ways in which they've been used in other Cayman legislation. Since the wording of the Cayman legislation was in all material respects identical to the equivalent UK legislation, we also considered case law dealing with the interpretation of that legislation. In addition, we examined the extent to which the Cayman legislation was intended to be a restatement in modern language of the previous common law of concealed fraud, again drawing on the relevant authorities. Our conclusion was that it represented a fresh start, enabling us to give effect to the ordinary meaning of the statutory language as enacted by the Cayman Parliament, without being tied to the past. Another example concerned the powers of the Jamaican Independent Commission of Investigations, known as INDICOM, and its commissioner and staff, and in particular whether they had the power to initiate prosecutions. INDICOM was established by the Independent Commission of Investigations Act 2010 to undertake investigations into actions by members of the Jamaican security forces and other state agents that result in a person's death or injury, or an abuse of their rights. The 2010 Act was passed to address the need identified by the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights in the case of Michael Gale against Jamaica for independent and effective investigation into the actions of the Jamaican security forces, which could lead to independent prosecution. The appeal concerned the fatal shooting of Frederick Mikey Hill by police in 2010. Following an investigation, INDICOM investigators initiated the prosecution of a police officer for Mr. Hill's murder. The Police Federation and others brought an action seeking administrative orders and constitutional redress under Section 25 of the Constitution of Jamaica on the ground that INDICOM had exceeded its powers. In broad terms, they contended that INDICOM only had the power to investigate police misconduct and not to prosecute officers for an offence. The principal question for the Privy Council was whether the Jamaican legislature intended that Indicom should have a prosecutorial function, in addition to its investigative function. Since the Act which established Indicom did not confer any express power to prosecute, it was necessary to consider whether such a power arose under the common law. This turned first of all on Indicom's legal status. The Privy Council concluded that although the 2010 Act did not expressly incorporate Indicom, it created it as a distinct entity with perpetual succession. Indicom was therefore in a position analogous to that of a statutory corporation. The relevant case law established that a consequence of this was that, in common with other kinds of statutory corporation, Indicom only had the powers conferred on it by the legislation. It was therefore clear that the Act gave Indicom only investigative powers. These examples illustrate some general points. In the first place, even where an area of life is regulated by legislation, the common law remains important. That's partly because legislation usually draws on concepts and principles developed in the common law, or on case law interpreting earlier statutes. In addition, every statutory provision of importance soon accrues a body of case law in which it is interpreted, so that lawyers and the courts consult the cases rather than just the text of the legislation itself in order to understand its effect. In reality, legislation cannot be enough by itself. It depends on the courts to bring it to life and to resolve its inevitable uncertainties, ambiguities, and omissions. A second point is that legal rules are often less clear than non-lawyers tend to imagine. How they are understood and applied by the courts can evolve over time as new problems present themselves and our society changes. In reality, the reasoning of judges in the most difficult cases is often based on understanding the thinking of their predecessors in the context of the problems which they faced, and trying to adapt their ideas to find the best solution for the problems of our own time within the framework of the concepts and principles which the earlier decisions have given us. That involves not only reading the text of earlier judgments, but understanding what the real question was to which the judgment was intended to provide an answer, understanding the historical context, and considering the impact of any relevant social changes which have occurred since then. For example, earlier today, I was hearing a case where the question is whether an injunction should be granted to prevent an employer from dismissing a number of its employees. The law books will tell you that an injunction is not available because the law will not compel an employer to keep on an employee against his will. The leading authorities are 19th century cases concerned with masters and servants, where there was a personal relationship of trust and confidence between the master and the servants whom he chose to employ. Our case is concerned with warehouse operatives employed by a multinational company with over 300,000 employees in the UK alone. Does the rule established by the older cases apply in this situation? We don't answer that question by asking ourselves what we think is a desirable social policy, but by analysing the rationale of the earlier decisions and considering whether that rationale applies in the different set of circumstances before us. In that way, we arrive at a result which fits the circumstances of our own time. Since society is constantly evolving, it follows that the law is in a process of continuous development by judges deciding cases that come before them in the courts. And because we have a system of precedent in which judges are bound by the decisions of higher courts, judgments in the higher courts are not simply decisions on the facts of particular cases, but have to form part of and often articulate a coherent explanation of the area of law relevant to the case in question, setting out principles which lower courts are bound to follow. How does this fit with my first contention that judges decide cases in good faith by applying the law to the facts of the cases before them? Some people argue that if that were true, surely there would always be one and only one legally correct answer. Yet the debate before the Privy Council in Primeo, for example, arose partly as a result of what we considered to have been a wrong decision made by the English Court of Appeal in construing the equivalent UK legislation. And there are undoubtedly decisions in the Privy Council which have caused significant shifts in the common law. One example from Jamaica concerned the law of joint enterprise. In 2010, the appellant Ruddock was convicted of the murder of Pete Robinson. Mr. Robinson was a taxi driver, and the prosecution's case was that the murder was committed in the course of a robbery. Mr. Robinson's body was found on a beach. His hands and feet had been tied, and his throat had been cut. A co-defendant, Hudson, pleaded guilty to the murder at the beginning of the trial. However, the investigating police officer's evidence was that Ruddock had given a statement when interviewed under caution to the effect that while he was not the one who had cut Mr. Robinson's throat, he was involved in the robbery and he had tied the deceased's hands and feet. The trial judge directed the jury that Ruddock was guilty of murder if he took part in the robbery and knew that there was a possibility that Hudson might intend to kill Mr. Robinson. This direction derived from an earlier Privy Council decision in a case called Chan Wing Siu, which was binding on the judge. In Ruddock, the Privy Council concluded unanimously that it had itself taken a wrong turn in the Chan Wing Siu case and in the cases which had followed it. It held that a defendant accused of being a secondary party to a crime could only be convicted if they intended to assist or encourage that crime. In other words, a secondary party such as Ruddock would only be guilty of Mr. Robinson's murder if he intended to assist or encourage the primary party, Hudson, to carry out that crime. Knowing that there was a possibility that the crime might be committed was not sufficient. It was simply evidence, although it might be strong evidence, that the secondary party intended to assist or encourage the primary party in committing the crime. It was a question for the jury in every case whether the intention to assist or encourage was proved. This change in approach by the Privy Council was not due to a difference between the personal views or values of the judges who decided Chan Wing Siu on the one hand and those who decided Ruddock on the other. The judges in both cases were engaged in a genuine attempt to identify a coherent set of legal norms from the previous authorities which they could use to resolve the problem before them. As a Canadian judge, Robert Sharp, has said, different judges see legal issues in different ways, and different judges acting in perfect good faith and sharing an eager desire to do justice will disagree. But he added, when I sit down to write my reasons, I find it difficult to describe my approach as being anything other than to do my best to come to the legally correct decision. 3 points emerge from this. The first is that as our legal system is a common law system based on the application of precedent, the primary source of its principles is a historical body of cases decided in the past and collected in the law reports. Each precedent concerns an individual human story which arose at some point in the past and resulted in a legal dispute which came before the courts for decision. In deciding the case, the judge may have articulated a legal principle which he or she understood himself or herself to be applying. or later judges may arrive at a principle by process of induction from a series of judicial decisions in individual cases. The process of development of a common law reflects the nature of its sources. Judges usually find in previous cases the principles which they apply, but as circumstances change and new cases come before the courts, and as the concepts used by judges in the past, such as the concept of what we mean by a family, or what we mean by torture or inhuman treatment, may come to denote other matters from those that judges may have envisaged in their own time, the principles which are inferred from the cases are refined or qualified, and the law develops in a way which is based on but modifies the tradition which courts have inherited. In a case which raises a novel or difficult question, the judge's task is to find the legal answer for their own time, and they may therefore need to take account of changes in attitudes and conditions since earlier cases were decided. The second point is that judging can also be affected, consciously or unconsciously, by the social environment in which it takes place inside the court, and by the personalities involved. Some judges are meticulous and conscientious. Some judges are imaginative. Some judges contribute to the creation of an atmosphere which encourages the free and confident expression of views. Some judges are good at working collaboratively with colleagues or assistants. Some judges are anxious to impress others with their cleverness. Some judges are keen to improve their prospects of promotion. Some judges are none of these things. Judges, in other words, are human beings operating in a social setting, and that can affect how they go about judging. My own aim as the President of the UK Supreme Court and the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council has been to create an environment in which everyone is comfortable expressing their own view, in which everyone has time to do their job properly, and in which judges are encouraged to work in a collaborative way, pooling ideas and working together to create the best judgments we can. When I sit on the Privy Council, I'm conscious that we are a group of judges from the UK who do not generally have significant experience of living and working in the jurisdictions we serve. As a result, depending on the nature of the case, we may need to be informed about those attitudes and conditions. In the past, senior judges from a number of other jurisdictions sat on the Privy Council when those countries had it as their highest court of appeal. For example, there was a more or less unbroken presence of a judge from India on the Privy Council from 1912 until 1949, when India established its own Supreme Court. Judges from outside the UK by no means always sat on cases from their own jurisdiction. For example, Sir Edward Zacher, who was at one time the Chief Justice of Jamaica and later the President of the Court of Appeal of the Bahamas, sat on the Privy Council between 1993 and 2004 in a number of cases from the Bahamas, the British Virgin Islands, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, and Mauritius, as well as some cases from Jamaica. In my own early years on the court, I sat several times with the President of the Supreme Court of New Zealand. Having the benefit of the opinion of a judge with direct experience of local conditions can only enhance the quality of the Privy Council's decision-making. I've therefore asked the UK government to consider a proposal to invite senior judges from outside the UK to sit with us again on the Privy Council. This isn't currently possible in relation to most of the Privy Council jurisdictions under the legislation which currently governs appointments. The exceptions include judges of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, the High Court of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Supreme Court of Jamaica, who can sit on the Privy Council if they are first appointed as Privy Councillors. At present, none of the judges from these jurisdictions are Privy Councillors, but I am hopeful that that position may change before long. In the meantime, I and my colleagues pay the greatest attention to the understanding of local conditions explained by the local court of appeal and by the local council who appear before us. That helps explain why it's important that the judges who sit on the Privy Council pay close attention to the decisions of the courts in the proceedings below us when deciding the appeals that come before us. The Privy Council has made it clear that it should not pronounce upon what may be issues of considerable constitutional importance without having the benefit of the opinion of the local Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal upon them. For example, in the Sean Campbell appeal that I discussed earlier, the appellants had advanced another argument, which was that their convictions should be quashed because they were obtained through the admission of evidence in breach of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms in the Jamaican Constitution. The appellants invited the board to lay down new principles as to how the Constitution should be interpreted, but their submissions on these points to the effect that the Charter should be interpreted in accordance with the approach taken to some other constitutional charters around the world, rather than as a Charter of Rights specifically for Jamaica, had not been made before the Court of Appeal in the proceedings in Jamaica. This meant that the Privy Council did not have the benefit of the views of the Jamaican judiciary on these issues. Given the Privy Council's conclusion that the appellant's convictions should be quashed on the ground of juror misconduct, there was no need to decide the question of constitutional interpretation in order to allow the appeal. Accordingly, the Privy Council concluded that consideration of these constitutional issues should be deferred to another occasion on which the board may be assisted by the views of the Jamaican judiciary. This doesn't mean that the Privy Council should always defer to the local courts. As I've explained in Sean Campbell, the Privy Council overturned the Court of Appeal's decision on the issue of juror misconduct. However, our judgments should be informed ones, reached where possible with the benefit of the analysis of the local judiciary. When we sit in the Privy Council, we always display the flag of the jurisdiction from which the appeal before us is being brought on the flagpole in the courtroom. This helps to remind everyone in the court that we are sitting as the highest appellate court of the jurisdiction to which the flag belongs, and we're applying the laws of that jurisdiction. Usually they have a common law system, and their law is similar, if not identical, to that which we apply in the UK. But sometimes those laws and the values that underpin them may differ from those that prevail in the UK. These cases have required us to grapple with complex issues, including the death penalty and gay rights, among others. For example, a recent appeal from Bermuda concerned same-sex marriage, which is lawful in the UK. The issue for the Privy Council was whether the law of Bermuda recognises same-sex marriage. Section 53 of the Bermudian Domestic Partnership Act of 2018 confines marriage to a union between a man and a woman. Other provisions of the Act allow same-sex couples to enter into a domestic partnership with the same legal effects as marriage. The respondents challenged the validity of the section on three grounds. First, they argued that it was passed primarily or mainly for a religious purpose, contrary to the secular nature of the Bermudian Constitution. Secondly, they argued that it hindered their enjoyment of their belief in same-sex marriage as an institution recognized by law. Their argument was that this was contrary to the guarantee of freedom of conscience in the Bermudian Constitution. Thirdly, they contended that Section 53 treated them and others in the same position in a way that amounted to discrimination on the grounds of creed, which is prohibited by the Bermudian Constitution. These arguments succeeded before the Bermudian courts, but the Privy Council allowed the Bermudian government's appeal. The board agreed unanimously that there was no provision in the Constitution which nullified legislation on the ground that it was enacted for a religious purpose. In any event, Section 53 was not passed for religious reasons, but rather as a compromise between different opinions in Bermuda, as well as to fulfill an electoral promise. We also all agreed that we should reject the challenge based on discrimination according to creed. Finally, by a majority of 4 to 1, we concluded that the Bermudian Constitution did not extend to imposing a positive obligation on Bermuda to make the law comply with the respondents' belief that Bermuda should give legal recognition to same-sex marriage. I want to emphasize that these conclusions were based on our interpretation of Bermudian law, not on policy considerations. They had nothing to do with any of the judge's personal views on same-sex marriage, nor did we seek to impose British attitudes to same-sex marriage on Bermuda. As explained in the judgment, we recognise that marriage is an institution with profound religious, ethical and cultural significance. That the historical background is one of the stigmatisation of gay people, and that the restriction of marriage to opposite-sex couples may create among gay people a sense of exclusion and stigma. There's considerable force in the policy argument in favour of same-sex marriage on the ground that it would accommodate diversity within society. But none of this meant that we could read into the Bermudian Constitution a right to the legal recognition of same-sex marriage. We considered that that was a matter for the legislature of Bermuda to be resolved through its democratic process. How then can we honestly assure the public that cases are not simply decided on the basis of judges' personal views of desirable social policy or on the basis of their emotional reactions? As I've explained, we're assisted in this by the surrounding constitutional and institutional framework, which imposes a number of important safeguards. Let me describe 3 safeguards that our institutional framework imposes. To begin with, the rule of law requires that laws must be administered openly and transparently in the courts. Historically, this has been a challenge for the Privy Council because of the geographical distance between London and many of the Privy Council jurisdictions. Furthermore, until 2009, Privy Council proceedings took place in a fairly inaccessible council chamber at number 9 Downing Street. Things are now very different. The Privy Council sits in Parliament Square, across the road from the Houses of Parliament, in the same building as the UK Supreme Court. The building is open to the public, and we have about 100,000 visitors a year. The Privy Council courtroom is usually busy with school and university students and other visitors, as well as the parties and their lawyers. Privy Council hearings are all live streamed on the court's website and made available on demand afterwards on both the website and the court's YouTube channel. For example, over 55,000 people watched the Sean Campbell hearing live online. This enabled those with an interest in the case in Jamaica and elsewhere, and there was a particularly high number of viewers in New York, to see the arguments being put forward by counsel, the questions being asked by the judges, and generally to get a much better understanding of the proceedings than would have been possible in the pre-internet age. We also live stream the delivery of Privy Council judgments in which there's public interest, when the judge who has written the lead judgment gives a short explanation of the court's decision in ordinary language. We try to do that at a time of day when it can be viewed in a relevant jurisdiction. For example, the Sean Campbell judgment was delivered at 10 in the morning in Jamaica. The Privy Council website provides a brief summary of the factual background and legal issues in every appeal before the court, and the most significant judgments are accompanied by a plain English summary of 2 or 3 pages. We're also planning to make the parties' written arguments available online ahead of the hearing. We hope that these initiatives promote clear and accurate media reporting and make it possible for members of the public to find out more about our work. Of course, I'm conscious of the significant expense involved in travelling to the UK from some of the Privy Council jurisdictions. The Privy Council therefore offers online or hybrid hearings, which can sometimes be the most efficient and proportionate option. This also enables us to hear the case at a time when it can be viewed by the public locally. For example, we had a case from the Cook Islands in the Pacific concerned with the protection of the marine environment. We heard the case online and sat at 7 o'clock in the evening in the UK, which was 9 o'clock in the morning in the Cook Islands. We're also very pleased when we were invited to sit in the Privy Council jurisdictions in person. During my time on the court, we've sat in Mauritius, in the Bahamas, and most recently in the Cayman Islands. The hearings were well attended by members of the public, and we also ran a series of meetings with court officers, educational events with schools and colleges, and meetings with judges, lawyers, politicians, and other community leaders, as well as taking the opportunity to travel around the islands. The second safeguard I'd like to highlight concerns our obligation to give reasons for our decisions. This has many aspects. In the first place, judges are obliged to reach their decisions by a process of legal reasoning. Only certain kinds of reasons count. Judges are not entitled to decide cases before them for political, moral, economic, or other kinds of reasons. Nor can they simply come down on the side of their gut instinct. What do I mean by legal reasoning? As we've seen in some of the appeals before courts like the Privy Council, the answer can't be found simply by identifying pre-existing statutory or judicial authorities and applying them to the facts of the case. So legal reasoning at this level isn't always concerned only with the legal rules and principles that already apply. It's also about identifying which new legal norms will best match with the fabric and texture of the norms that have come before it. Well, this brings me to another aspect of the obligation to give reasons, which concerns the need for my reasons to be ones that will be recognised and respected by my colleagues on the bench. In the Privy Council, appeals are generally heard by panels of 5 judges, and the process by which judgments are produced is a highly collegiate one, with the judgments often being written by a number of judges working together. After I read the papers before an appeal hearing, I will start to sketch out my preliminary views, at this stage working alone. However, I'm soon required to engage with my colleagues. Before the start of every hearing, the judges gather together to share their preliminary views on the case. Immediately after the hearing, we meet again. At this much longer meeting, each judge gives his or her provisional view on whether to allow or dismiss the appeal, together with a summary of their main reasons. Just as verbal sparring and a blow-by-blow dismantling of a paper are not unheard of in universities, a lively combat of ideas also takes place between the judges at these post-hearing meetings. We learn a lot from these robust encounters, and we have our minds changed by them. If any judge were to incorporate non-legal reasoning into their analysis, this would be challenged very swiftly. Further exchanges of views take place when the judge or judges who have written the lead judgment share a draft version with the other members of the court, generally by email, and they then make their own comments and suggestions. My colleagues' comments invariably improve my drafts, and the final version of the judgment is stronger as a result. And so these internal processes ensure that we work closely together to try to achieve the best judgment possible. Most importantly, our reasons are for the public that we serve. Court judgments need to be able to demonstrate to the litigants and to the public that we've heard and responded to the arguments, and to provide them with a reasoned explanation of our decision so that they can understand why we've come down on one side or another. We also need to be able to show in our judgments that we've reached our decision for legal reasons and not for any others. This is particularly critical in judgments given by appellate courts like the Privy Council, when many of the issues we consider matter not only to the parties before us, but also to the wider public. An important difference between the judicial and legislative branches of government is that judges cannot pick and choose the issues on which they wish to pronounce. We can only decide the cases that come before us, and we have to decide those cases, one way or the other. And in the Privy Council, we can only decide appeals from countries that wish to send appeals to us. The larger countries in the Commonwealth, such as India and Australia, long ago established their own highest courts. Some smaller countries, such as Barbados and St. Lucia, have also chosen to end their use of the Privy Council and to send their appeals instead to the Caribbean Court of Justice. Other countries, including some independent republics, such as Mauritius and Trinidad and Tobago, have chosen to continue using the Privy Council. That is entirely a matter for them. We are pleased to provide a service to those who want it, and we also maintain a friendly relationship with those who do not. For my part, I would echo what was said by Lord Newburger, my predecessor, in 2013, that we believe that the possibility of using the Privy Council represents a valuable contribution to the rule of law, both for particular countries and across the common law world. As the Privy Council continues to evolve, my priority is to ensure that this commitment to justice and the rule of law is felt throughout all the jurisdictions we serve. As judges, it is our vocation to give people a reason to believe that justice is possible. We have a duty to do our best to make justice happen every day, to try to make the world more just for all our citizens. I'm very grateful for the opportunities we have to serve the citizens of Jamaica and the other Privy Council jurisdictions. It is a responsibility that I and my colleagues take very seriously and an enormous privilege. Thank you all for listening to me.
That was President of the Judicial Committee of the UK-based Privy Council, Lord Reid. He was speaking or delivering his lecture at the University of the West Indies, Mona, on the topic of judicial policy construction by apex courts. Well, after this, we're going to have Sagicor Investments feature Think Like a Stockbroker.
Chewy flavor with delight. It really, really nice. May I have to say it twice.
The time by Jamaica Mountain Peak Golden Turmeric Latte is
7:25.
When I grow up, I'm going to be a famous gamer with viral videos all over the internet. I'm going to be rich. Good thing I'll already know how to take care of my money since Mommy got me this Sure Start account.
Open a CIBC Caribbean Sure Start account for your kids and give them a head start on financial smarts with a $1,200 sign-up bonus from us. We believe in their dreams as much as you do, so let's get them going together. Start young, start strong with Sure Start from CIBC.
Welcome deluxe, the cream cracker that rises to the top.
So crisp, so light, so buttery.
When you're good, you're just good. Hey, had the national flavor. You go off and buy this bag. So good, it's just so good. Welcome deluxe, the cream cracker that rises to the top.
So crisp, so light, so buttery.
National Baking Company, just so good.
Some dreamers picture a place they call home, a house with no mortgage, a home that they own. Some dream of owning their very own store, meet a cafe or florist, or growing one into more. Where one dreams of making luxury shopping the norm, others dream of sports cars, the kind that perform. But one thing in common these dreamers all need is to build their wealth so they can achieve.
Never settle for less than your dreams with Sagicor Investments. Call 888-SAGICOR to speak with a wealth advisor.
Taboo topics, voyagings after dusk,
riveting discussions,
celebrity news and interviews,
topics that are shunned by society,
and everything else in between.
Boyatings After Dark with Kareem Boyatings each and every Wednesday, 8 to 11 p.m.
Boyatings After Dark.
No topic is too taboo or hard to discuss. Come get your mind blown and your curiosity explored.
Boyatings After Dark.
Hi there. Here's some good news for these trying times. Quote, "By God's word, I can see where I'm going. They throw a beam of light on my dark path." Unquote. Psalm 119, verse 105. Listen for God's Word weekdays at 5:45 a.m. and 12:55 p.m. through
Oasis. Stop by for a refreshing drink and share a God perspective for the day.
Oasis. Weekdays 5:45 a.m. and 12:55 p.m. right here on Nationwide, a revolution in media.
The rebroadcast of The Oasis can be heard weekdays at 5:45 a.m.
The Oasis is brought to you by Solar Tech Jamaica. We use the gift of the sun to power our world.
Tune in to Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. Stay ahead of the curve with our cutting-edge reporting and accurate breaking news coverage.
We're having an earthquake. Oh, God.
Hear it here first on Nationwide 90 FM.
Is that really clip you started?
Tune in, turn up the volume, and listen. We bring a mix of news, entertainment, and sports to your lives.
Nationwide 90 FM's live and continuous coverage of the World Championships in Budapest, Hungary.
News and discussions week mornings.
Coming up in the news at 6 for this morning.
Entertainment in the afternoons, then news again in the evenings.
Nationwide news at this hour, fired.
Also tune into the entertainment and sports shows in the nights and on the weekends.
It is Boy Things After Dark right here on Nationwide 90 FM.
Everything is news, from current affairs and entertainment to sports, business and other categories.
Nationwide 90 FM. This is Beanie Man. Give it to them. Zaga, Zen.
From every whisper to every commotion.
That's rubbish. The KSAMC cannot investigate itself.
Was Click News really talking like that?
Every news story unfolds here first at Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. Every sound is a story, and every story we share is news.
Some see the glass half empty, others see the glass half full. You check if there's water in the tap, because smart investors think ahead. This is Sagicor Investments Think Like a Stockbroker, giving you a clearer perspective on the investment markets.
Welcome to Sagicor Investments Think Like a Stockbroker, where we give you the information and insights you need to navigate the market. Joining me again is Jodian Aris. She's Sagicor Investments Assistant Vice President for Research and Strategy. Good evening again, Jodian. How are you?
I am doing actually very well, Siobhan. Thanks. I also just want to say, a very pleasant evening to your listeners and viewers who are joining in with us.
So let's recap. Last week we talked about what it is to think like a stockbroker. Give us that information.
So first of all, let me say, thinking like a stockbroker is nothing too hard, right? Once it is that you are listening to us here, I think like a stockbroker, you're already of that mindset. And what it is that you're keeping up to date on what's happening in the markets, what's happening on a global or national landscape. And you're thinking, how is it that this information that I have been keeping up to date with will have some impact in the future? Because as investors, we're buying into the future. So it's really looking at what's happening currently and thinking, how could this have some impact on the market? So for example, if there's a new government policy that is to come out, you'd want to sit down and you'd want to think, hey, what is this going to impact? Is there a specific sector that is going to have a positive benefit for or a negative benefit for? And then once it is that I have that sort of assessment, I'll then apply it in terms of where it is that I think could be most impacted. And if I think a particular sector or company will be impacted, then I'm going to buy into that company or sector because I expect future things to come. So that's really it.
So a part of developing that mindset now is to understand the terminology and the jargon. Yes. And one of those pieces of jargon we want to touch upon this week is mega forces. Tell us, Jodian, what are mega forces?
So let's start with mega, right? And mega indicates something huge. And so what mega forces are really just large, significant structural changes that will have some impact on investing, whether currently or in the future. So once we touch on mega forces, we're thinking stuff like aging population, we're thinking low carbon emissions. We're thinking of artificial intelligence. So those are things that are going to have some sort of a big or steep impact in the way it is that we do business, the way it is that we consume, the way it is that we operate, and we expect that those are going to have some impact in terms of how it is that we invest for now as well as for our future. And it is really a long-term type impact. And, even though we're thinking about it from what could be positive, the mega forces could also, present some amounts of risk. And, as you're able, Sagicor Investments advisors, we really would provide that information as to where it is that we'd want to steer you towards to benefit from these 5 mega forces.
And now that you bring it up, you can't go anywhere without hearing about artificial intelligence, things like low carbon emissions,
Right.
etc. How do those things now impact the local Jamaican market?
So it definitely does have an impact for us. And I think if you consider that we are in a space where we're importing, so a lot of persons would now have electric vehicles currently operating in Jamaica. So what does that mean for us, in terms of having the ability to service those, or whether it is you're going to see a difference in terms of how gas operators are going to shift in terms of our landscape. So we'll definitely see some impact for us, and that's just one area. We also would have aging population. More of us are caring for parents as they live longer, and that will have some impact on how it is that we save, how it is that we invest, how is it that we take care of them, the needs, how it is that our baskets of goods will change, whether it is they're living with us or there are going to be more options for, homes where they can go and recreational activities that you need for aging population. So it definitely will impact us, not just in terms of our everyday day-to-day lives, but what it is that we're investing in. So if you consider a company that is in pharmaceutical space, is it then that with an aging population that there could see higher demand because they're going to be serving that group of persons for a longer period of time? If you think about companies that are in the retail space providing, for example, gasoline, how is it that's shifting with low carbon emissions and more electric vehicles that have an impact? And even more directly, not so much future-wise, Sagicor Investments does allow our clients to invest in the U.S. market. So there are companies that are currently listed in the U.S. market that are operating in EVs, that are operating in artificial intelligence and digital disruption, and we give our clients opportunities to buy into those.
And you guide your clients into
Definitely.
which ones that you can invest in.
Definitely.
But looking locally, though, we touched on a few economic indicators last week, but we want to delve a little deeper now into this topic of inflation. You can't go anywhere in Jamaica without hearing about inflation and how it's impacting lives here. Explain that to us.
Okay, so inflation, as we mentioned last week, is a basic return that you want. So you want to be able to, at very minimum, be able to consume the same things you did last year, this year. And so inflation is that minimum. What it also impacts is how it is that companies or federal banks and monetary policy actually flows in a market. So they have a target that they'd want to achieve, and then they would then look at inflation to see how is it that we can use our tools at the monetary policy level to impact inflation. So it's definitely very important for us as investors from the two sides, because it impacts what it is that we require as our minimum for investing, as well as it will have some impact in terms of what it is that's one of those economic indicators that we track and how it could have further impact on us.
And when we talk about inflation here, you often hear about the Federal Reserve in the United States and their own interest rates, etc. How do those two things now intersect?
Well, they're very close. They're like brother and sister, probably the one to say. So if you think about how it is that, as I mentioned, the Federal Reserve has a target. So they have a 2% target for inflation. And what it is that they're trying to do is to use a tool such as a policy rate to try and have an impact on that 2%. And that policy rate impacts inflation. So it really speaks to how it is that they're able to watch what's happening in the inflation landscape. So if it is that we're seeing inflation moving in towards a positive trend of moving downwards, then they'd probably move towards the easing that interest rate. If it's not, then they want to hold that rate at a higher level so that persons are forced to do a little bit more saving as opposed to spending, and that provides a little bit of cooling. And that's really how it is that they really intersect. So one is really watching the other to have an impact on the market.
And when we talk about the Federal Reserve in the United States, there's this thing known as the Federal Open Committee meeting. And I understand that it is scheduled for later this April or end of April. What does that mean for Jamaicans?
So it's something that we're watching, and what it is that we are not isolated as Jamaica. So even though we are here, we still have an impact in terms of what happens, right? So as Jamaicans, you have the opportunity to spend abroad, you have the opportunity to save abroad as well. And for us, if it is that the Federal Reserve maintains a high rate, then that impacts how soon it is that our local central bank can decide that, hey, we're going to start to reduce rates, because you don't want to have a super high rate in the US and then a low rate in Jamaica, and persons be like, it makes sense to save abroad then instead of, and then you have, what we call capital flight. So it really has to be that we maintain from a central bank locally, that we maintain rates that have a certain differential between what's in the US, so that we can keep capital here. And that's one of the big impacts in terms of why it is that it's important for us to watch and have an understanding of what it is that the Federal Reserve is doing in terms of rates.
So all eyes are on that meeting, and what is decided at that meeting will undoubtedly affect us here.
Yes, it will.
So let's look now as to how things are shifting here in Jamaica. What are the latest inflation numbers?
So we got some good news, guys. So coming out from March, we'd have seen inflation dip to 5.6%, the annual rate, and that would have been within the target. So last week we touched on that the BOJ has a specific target that they want inflation to fall into. So they want it to be between 4 and 6%, and 5.6 is within target. So that brings a bit of a good news for our market in terms of inflation trending into that 4 to 6% band that we wanted. But I think generally our projections though for long term is that we could see months where it is above that 6%. So even though this is good news for this month, you still have to be thinking futuristic as a stockbroker, and you have to factor in what it is that it's likely to be going forward. So we will have moments or months where it is falling within that 4 to 6% band, but there will also be months where we'll be a little bit over that 6%.
So you have to really stay on your toes. You can't just count on something being the same month on month.
No, and things are happening and they're having impact. So if you think about even geopolitical issues, those have an impact in terms of oil and those prices. So it could easily be that we're here, something happens somewhere, and that has an impact on oil, and then we have to consume, we import. And then, that spikes because persons still have to go around, they still have to drop your children to school, they still have to get to work, and you're going to consume, and that could then have an impact in terms of what it is that you see in terms of inflation. So it's month by month that you have to track it. It can't,
So I understand that when we're talking about things like low carbon emissions, I understand you have a little insight for us in terms of Wigton Wind Farm. What do you have on that?
So it's really nice news. So part of what happened when Wigton came to market in 2019 is that the government really wanted a system where there was diverse shareholder holdings. So they didn't want one person to be holding too much. They wanted everybody to buy into a piece of it. And just to recap, that Wigton would have been a government agency, and then they divested. Right, and then they divested. And so what happened is that they said that 5 years after listing, they'd remove that limit. So up to from 2019 up until this month, 2024, no one person or institution could hold more than 10% of Wigton shares, and now that restriction has been removed. So an individual or a company or a fund could then buy into Wigton and have more than 10%.
Oh, that's impressive. So how does that stand now? How has that shifted things at Wigton?
Well, in leading up to the removal of that sort of cap, we would have seen quite a bit of trading activities surrounding Wigton. So I think for a few months it would have been like volume leader, and the stock price would have moved up quite a bit. So I think at the end of last year, or towards the end of last year, Wigton was trading below $1, and I think now it is trading probably $1.15, somewhere around that region. So you'd have seen a bit of optimism in terms of what market is expecting. Remember, you're looking at current trends as a stockbroker and what it could mean for future. And it's just an anticipation that you could see funds or investors buying more into it, and that would have had an impact in terms of the demand for the stock.
Oh, and are there any other hot picks or top picks that you would recommend this week?
Let's see. Sure. One I'd probably touch on is Knutsford Express. They would have had their results coming out recently, and you'd have seen that there's an increase in revenue and profit for that company. And it's a company that was hit because of COVID. You remember, one person's not going anywhere, so they would have
I can imagine.
somewhat of a standstill. And so we are seeing somewhat of a rebounding. The stock price has moved, back to where it was pre-COVID. And we're seeing, in terms of revenue and profits, an improvement there. And the expectation that the expansion, the courier service is also doing well. So, a lot of persons with a shift in how it is that we do business now, that persons do a lot of online sales and they ship those island-wide through Knutsford Express. So, it has had a boost for them as well.
There you have it, listeners and viewers. Thank you again for joining us for this edition of Think Like a Stockbroker. Join us again next week, same time.
That was Sagicor Investments Think Like a Stockbroker. Smart investors think ahead. Join us on Nationwide 90 FM, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. for Sagicor Investments Think Like a Stockbroker. When you build wealth with Sagicor Investments, you never have to settle for less than your dreams. Call 888 Sagicor to speak with a wealth advisor so Sagicor Investments can help you create, grow, and preserve your wealth.
Well, listeners, we're gearing up to take your calls. The numbers are 630-937-124 and 618-8255. Come chat with us after this break.
Some dreamers picture a place they call home, a house with no mortgage, a home that they own. Some dream of owning their very own store, meet a cafe or florist, or growing one into more. Where one dreams of making luxury shopping the norm, others dream of sports cars, the kind that perform. But one thing in common these dreamers all need is to build their wealth so they can achieve.
Never settle for less than your dreams with Sagicor Investments. Call 888 Sagicor to speak with a wealth advisor.
Taboo topics, bulletins after dark,
Riveting discussions,
celebrity news and interviews,
topics that are shunned by society,
and everything else in between. Bulletins After Dark with Kareem Bulletins each and every Wednesday, 8 to 11 p.m. Bulletins After Dark. No topic is too taboo or hard to discuss. Come get your mind blown and your curiosity explored. Bulletins After Dark.
7:45 and we're taking your calls. The numbers again are 630-937-124 and 618-8255. Cleveland, you're on the line.
Yes, Mr. Siobhan and Shadi.
How are you doing, Cleveland?
Siobhan, let me congratulate you. I see you put on your foot last night with Miss Narcisse.
Well, we try.
Yes, man.
We can differ, but we don't need to be rude.
Yeah, and she needs to still understand that she mustn't come on the program and be like a bully over everybody else.
I don't mind her being forceful with her point, but there comes a time when you have to give others some consideration.
Now, what is really the verdict against the ruling, or what was the ruling really about the DPP?
The DP. Oh, we're going back to that matter. Well,
yes, because
Saeed, we have the well, we have the lawyer here, but Saeed don't want to touch that one. Well, it seems to be I want to say it's not quite unambiguous. You ask two different lawyers and they give you two different interpretations of that ruling.
That's right. That's right. So some of our DLP people is saying that the government should not go back to the court or appeal the case. But it's still not clear.
Well, there's
the verdict.
There's nothing wrong with seeking clarity, but there are some who suggest that even if you get that clarity, the current DPP should still not be put in the position.
Yes, from that, but it still needs to clear up.
And it's the government's right and duty to seek clarity if they so wish.
Yes, and that's what our people have to understand. Then the government not doing anything wrong in this thing.
Now, my concern with the government is that I don't think it should have come this far. We should have settled this before it had to go to a court in a reasonable manner. And I don't think the government did enough planning in the interest of the public in case something has went wrong, and they were forced to put in some last-minute measures to ensure that there was some continuity in the courts.
Well, here, Mr. Robinson, Julian Robinson, talking about the root cause. The government must do something about the root cause of crime. What would be that root cause? What is the root cause of crime here?
Well, I mean, I think most people accept the root cause of crime is the poor state of many homes in the country in terms of values and the need for social interventions. But I think his more troubled issue is this matter of punishing people under the age of 18 to the extent that the new mandatory minimums would.
Yes, which I agree. But the country have to be careful with these people. We're excusing some of these people in doing wrongs because they feel they will get away.
No, but I mean, I have to side with the Prime Minister in terms of I think the scale of the problem is being overblown, because I think he provided some statistics. Only like 79 children in the last 3 years were actually charged with murder, and that is not even how many were actually convicted with murder. The figure is probably far lower than that.
Yes.
So,
and what Mr. Robinson have to remember, some relative of his was out in the St. Catherine as a member of Parliament. And when the crime was so high, that poor lady have to run, and they wouldn't even tear no mind when she begging for help. You see, says it's not just that is no crime just come here now. Crime is here from ever since. Right? And you have to understand that. And it takes all of us to do something about the crime. Every jack one of us. And need some time to refer to the family system and tell the family them need to grow up their children in the right and proper way, and them themselves need to stop having fights and gun shooting against them one another. Not just the government. All
I hear
of
you,
us
Cleveland.
have a thing in it.
Zaid, you wanted to comment?
Other than to say that I disagree with you.
Then go ahead, disagree.
No, that's it. I disagree. That's it.
But I would like to hear the essence of your disagreement.
It's not a matter of, it's not a full-blown problem because only 75 minors are charged from
you're good enough,
for example. Bugs, you can turn up the mic? Himself now hear me. Yeah, it's not a matter of that.
Better.
I think law is law, and in as much as it might be a small number of persons affected, you still have to ensure that the principle behind it does not inordinately meet to someone else's demise. Yeah. So I don't take that argument.
So you don't think the right balance is being struck with this?
I did not comment on that.
All right.
What I'm
it's
saying
just the scale that you have a problem.
What I'm saying is
my comment on the scale.
Using the scale
right.
as a reason to say that it's not that big of an issue is a problem within itself.
All right.
Yeah, because laws don't necessarily take into consideration the scales of things.
Because law is an individual thing. When you go before the court, you go before the court as an individual.
Exactly.
I can take that point.
And within that scale, it might be, let's say 40 people get convicted.
But you still deserve justice.
There you go.
I agree. Right. I'll take that point.
Yeah.
I take that point.
So that's all.
Anyhow, make somebody else get this.
Yeah, man, Cleveland. Take care.
Richie, you're on the line.
Good evening, Richie.
Good evening, Bridget. Council.
How you do?
Why, good, you're the morning program come on night one.
Pardon?
He's just visiting.
Well, I'll have you know, Richie. I've had the benefit. One of the few who've had the benefit of this organization. I started out at Nationwide at 5. You remember? You recall? When I had on my training wheels with Cliff?
Okay, yeah.
Yes. I started out here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm just coming back to, they've leaned on me in times of help.
Mm-hmm.
And the good lad I'm always here to help.
Yes, I agree. That means you're not a leopard.
You're not easy at all, Richie.
Be easy, but we have to have easy.
You're not easy at all.
I support what Cleveland said a while about Mrs. Narseed.
Mm-hmm.
She come across as she's a bad bull jump on a weak fence. I have to slow down my clip of it.
What was that one? Go again.
Me say she come across as if she's a bad bull jump on a weak fence.
Oh dear.
That's how she come across because it's like, I mean, you come to a point where she don't want nobody to start and she has bring points to you and all that type of stuff. She doesn't want to listen. to a point where people have to stop her. And all them just playing politics. Anyway, my point is this. Papa Nana asked me to give Andrew a message for him. The Prime Minister, me tell him that whenever he's going to put that man into all sharp position, he must cook a pot and make people eat food. Because if a person is hungry, them not going to have the time to listen to him. Because they're focused on hunger. And if he wants some chicken, if you tell him, make him save some chicken that you want to collect them. That is for the Prime Minister.
So that's coming from Papa Nana, not you.
Papa Nana. That's right. Yes, sir. That's what I call to talk about.
All right, Richie.
All right, big up yourself, sir.
Big up yourself, Richie. Take care.
Carl, you're on the line.
Yeah, Evelyn. I said, all of a sudden, the law in Jamaica is a shackle now. The law is a shackle. But one good thing about it, I listened to the gentleman from England that was here talking about the Privy Council. And all who did have it in mind, so we are going to Caribbean Court of Justice, forget it. I am not in that.
For
the gentleman said
for
to me this evening, say, as long as we want to steer to the Privy Council, them have no problem.
Mm-hmm. But it's not whether it's not whether they will accept us, at the foundation of the argument is how accessible that court is, and the cost to Jamaicans, and the nativity of the court.
Siobhan, I heard that argument already, and the head of it said to me, say, a lawyer can represent you from right on in this on a computer.
I suppose technology bridges that gap.
Right,
there's still other concerns.
That is a very poor argument to come with now.
But there's still other concerns.
If you have a good lawyer, he can represent you from right at in this a computer. So that is a poor argument now. We no want no Caribbean Court of Justice. We no lawyer and no judge got cool with them one another. We want to steer with the Privy Council. It has been so good to us for years now. That's how we are done.
And why do you feel that the legal fraternity is so tainted by its closeness, so to speak?
I don't want to go there with you tonight.
All right.
I'm leaving it. I don't want to go there so with you, none at all. The arms of the PMP, the human wrongs them. One was there yesterday evening, one was here this morning, and then what then did I look for is that the bill where they claim to say Miss Holness did a hide come to light yesterday evening. And the whole of the arms, the human wrongs them embarrassed yesterday evening. Because what then did I look for? They not get it. Because she did hide something concerning one of our minister, our husband. Come here, one call all Cliff last week, Thursday from St. Elizabeth. Said that's why the Prime Minister I call executive meeting Sunday and Cliff have to cut him. Because everybody did wait on the 5. See,
no, but I thought I had settled that you were not going to get any illicit from the information that was going to come out this Tuesday.
But then, when you every way of me, all one of me, people from my church say, hey, come Tuesday, finish with. And the girl car wash me here, one and tell me, say, come Tuesday. Half day him a work.
So why never tell them the nation why they already tell you so that was not going to come Tuesday?
Because me tell you, the biggest problem where they come with them have. And they not stop to even stop and think. The bad mind Peter Philip over Andrew Holness' house. Spend all line time and talk about Andrew Holness' house and didn't get 49. He said, when I get up now, and you step aside and go, with who? When you look at what happened to Duvian and Westmoreland, who have no more confidence in this integrity commission? Tell me, Said, you're a liar.
Well, I have to do with confidence in the integrity commission, my friend.
When you look when you listen yesterday and listen to Duvian and listen to the mess that they put Duvian into.
No, here's an interesting. Let me tell you something, Carl, that I think a lot of Jamaicans do not actually appreciate the positions that both political parties have in terms of the Integrity Commission. If you polled both of them, all the MPs and all the senators, and you asked them, would you remove, for example, the gag clause from the Integrity Commission? I bet you the majority would say no, regardless of which side of the house they come from.
Okay. You know, can we want to give other person a talk? There was a state minister of national security in the 90s. I'm frightened to see our comrade Rowan James, them a PMP, did say, I did drop out of school, turn police, and they want big pay. That Six Jackson did say that about them, about the police force. And if you want to test me upon that, we can bring the evidence to Six Jackson. When he was state minister. The evidence is here. And when we see police now tell me, say, no, them are PMP, me have to laugh. When them get such a good pay now. Six Jackson said that. Say, I little chop out them becomes police. And them come and ask me. There was a negotiation going on at the same time when he said that about the police force.
I hear you, Carl, but time, run out of time, 7:59, have to wrap up, sorry. All right. Well, that's it, listeners. 7:59. We're taking off now. Thanks to our super producer Dana Davey, our technical operator Andrew Glenn Anderson, and all my friends and compatriots in the news and production department, led by the very capable Cara Powell, as well as every one of our listeners and those in YouTube land. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Siobhan Campbell.
I'm Saeed Bernard.
Have a good evening.